Hi, Pike. Welcome back.
Hi, Holowix.
It's been so long.
Yes, I am back. How long has it been?
So not that long actually, but I have spent all this time building this amazing new layout. You've seen it, and now
Yeah,
everyone else can see it. All the little L cars things going on. We got two copies of the Defiant. We got little showy thing by where we'll eventually have people posting when we're popular enough. We got numbers randomly on the side. It's perfect.
hmm. Yeah, your project has turned out great. Very
My only
nice.
issue, and I think I have a way to address this later, but I wasn't able to test it out this time, so we're gonna have to deal with it. Is like the little window for our Discord bubbles. It's a little bit more like off grayish or like dark
Hmm.
gray, so it doesn't exactly fit in with the pure black background. I have two options to fix that. One of which is to just change the background to the same color, or two, but I don't think that works as well. Or two, apparently, if you use like Discord and window mode, and then I have like this filter you could put on it that makes it all black, I think that would work best. Either way, that's something I will
Okay.
test for later.
Yeah.
But either way,
Anyways,
we're in season two now.
yeah, season two. We are officially in the. We are not just going to die after one season and be that weird spin-off to TNG. We're in we're our own show now. Woo!
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to say. Although I was looking at some of the titles for the season, I forgot what the final episode of the season's called, and it made me think, oh yeah, that happens really soon. Um,
Oh,
if you look at what
what
the title of the last episode of season two is.
let me look it up. Uh, oh, yeah, no, yeah, remember, they have to set that
No,
up. They
I
have to,
know it's like every time I like rewatch DS9, I forget how soon some of the things happen. I'm like, oh my god, that's right. And I guess honestly, it feels like just a lot happens in season one, and I was like, man,
Mhm.
like I feel like this stuff is a lot more drawn out, but it's not. They really kind of go hard for some of these things really quickly.
Yeah,
Let's
they,
see.
want to keep that pace going. Better than meandering, like certain shows do. And
Yeah,
better than staying around far too long. You know, that is.
true. But yes, we are officially in season two. Predictions, Pike. Do you think this season will be better or worse than the last season?
Better.
Any particular reason
Uh,
why you just think they'll have like their feet under them now and
no
they know what they're
Dax.
doing?
No Dax.
You mean the episode, not the character, right?
Yeah, yeah. Take it however you want.
Hey, there
I
is
mean,
Dax is in this season. In fact, I can't tell from I can't tell from immediately, but I'm pretty sure there's at
uh,
least a few episodes involving her.
honestly, I should have just stayed silent because I know your brain would have gone to the fucking Anakin Padme meme where he stares at her and it's like, you mean the
No,
episode, right?
Dax. Oh God, you mean the other? It is like no, no. Uh, oh, and then
I mean,
I will say this is probably the first season. That's actually a little bit of a spoiler. So you know what? I'm gonna ignore that.
yeah,
But
shut your mouth. I almost spoiled something as well just
uh,
a second ago, but
the thing that's I guess maybe a little bit interesting about the start of the season, and I'm gonna try and figure out how we can get that all done in a very short period of time, given our terrible scheduling. Uh, the first part of this season is a three-parter, right?
yeah, it's the first three-parter in Star Trek history, and an interesting fact I know, they do not do this again until Enterprise, 11 years from this episode.
No, in all
Well,
fairness,
this like
true. I guess this is the three-parter in terms of that, but the season finale of DS9, series finale of DS9 is a seven-parter.
I mean, yeah, but at that point, it's like it's very weird because then it's like, well, what if a show's episodes are like directly connected one after the other? Is that like a 12-parter? And it's like,
Well, I mean,
no,
I also find that kind of interesting because like while this is because you reminded me this is a three-parter before we started like a while ago, or I think like by the time we finished the last recording,
hmm
and uh, I'm not gonna lie, First off, they're all given different names, so I kind of didn't remember it until I was rewatching the episode because it's Homecoming is the first episode, is what we're doing today. The Circle and the
Mhm,
Siege. So
mhm.
obviously, like they're not just given like the Homecoming part one, two, and three, right?
Right.
But what I would say is, I think this first episode itself is kind of a beginning, middle, and end. There is clearly an ongoing plot line that is going to be continued, but oop,
Yeah.
I'm getting some feedback from you, but I think it's fine now. There we go.
It's very much a episode where it can be like it's it's still like
There's a
how
change
to
to the
put
status
it.
quo at the end of this episode that they're going to have to
Y-
address going forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so let me see. I gotta adjust my mic real quick. I think that should still be good.
Oh wait, I just realized we're gonna get sassy Kai Wynn again, I believe, this episode. Ooh
No, Kai
boy.
Wynn is not in this episode.
Oh, is it next episode then?
Yes, I
Yeah, it has to
believe so, because this episode is focused on a new character, Lee Nollis.
be. Yeah, Lee Nallis. Unironically, I like the character.
I think it's interesting. I think I have maybe one criticism going forward that we'll talk about, but so we might as well get right into it because we have like 3 episodes we were going to want to cover in relatively quick succession. And I think we're going to be able to talk more about prior episodes the more we talk about the later ones, given that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we don't need to spend too much time. This first scene is actually not a bad one, although it doesn't really have anything to do with the series. It's kind of just a reintroduction to, I guess, what the series kind of recognizes as like their best character dynamic right at this point.
Uh,
It's a Odo Quark.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
not really too
Yeah.
much that goes on in this scene. It's like Odo basically corners Quark. Quark doesn't seem like Quark seems busy running what it seems like a busy night at at his bar, and
hmm
Odo basically comes up to
Hey,
him and
hey,
says like,
hey, hey! It's not just a bar; it's a family.
yes, either way.
Family we exploit.
So he hold on, I still keep getting feedback from you, Pike.
Uh,
Let's see.
well,
It's
I'm
fine.
just gonna mute myself and talk.
Okay, just yeah, if you just do push to talk, that should be perfectly fine. Um, but anyway, so Odo is he comes up to Quark and he has his normal brash demeanor with Quark. However, when he asks like I checked out the Salian what was it called? It's like a weird alien name. It's like the Sibyat freighter. They were apparently smuggling stuff, and it was a tip off that was given by Quark. So yeah,
Hmm.
like for some reason like he's
Interesting.
offer like Odo is more concerned with why is it that Quark is giving me this like information free of charge. And
hmm
let's see, we have to do this real quick.
Sometimes I think there's no pleasing you.
The actual
I
recording.
help you craft.
Didn't have it because I'm stupid. This new layout has thrown me for a loop. But yes, so
He
Odo
set
is basically saying,
himself up for failure.
Odo is
Right.
basically trying to think like, I'm trying to figure out why you're giving me this information, and Quark is just being his snarky self. He's like, "Congratulations, Constable! I knew you could do it. If you don't mind me, I gotta go upstairs." And really, like, when eventually, like, Quark says, like, "Why are you constantly treating me like the enemy?" And Odo says, "Because you are the enemy." And then Quark says, "Then how does that justify me helping you?" And Odo doesn't really have a response to that. So really, he's just really like again. I don't think this part doesn't really have anything to do with the episode. One thing does happen at the end of this scene, but generally, this interaction between him and Odo doesn't go anywhere. It's just kind of a weird situation. Although when Rom comes in and says like, why did you help him out? That freighter shipment could have gotten us a lot of profit. And Quark says, like, have you forgotten the 76th rule of acquisition? Every once in a while, declare peace. It confuses the hell out of your enemies.
Yeah, that's something you should always like. Even before watching this series, that was a good one to use because it's just like anything to throw off the opponent. It's just like it's a good way to just get ahead because suddenly, oh, how do I
I,
fit in you being friendly to my plans?
I know there's like an actual like book. I think of like all the known rules of acquisition, but
Yeah,
now I do really want just like I guess like the rules of acquisition are just their version of like Sun Tzu's The Art of War. It's like every page is just like a small like snippet of information, and then there's like an entire like part of the book that's devoted to analyzing what that means.
Actually is. There is like
It's
I'm
like
pretty sure they bring up
it's like all right, all profit is based on deception.
well, like yeah, like I there is I'm 99% sure they bring it up in this series, and even if there's not, it's like yeah, there's absolutely a market for commentaries on the rules of acquisition. It's
No,
just
yeah, and
like
I want like a real life version of it. Is kind of what I'm saying.
nerd. He wants to read nerd.
Well, in all fairness, it's like a super easy read because it's like every page would be like, all right, here's just like one like line. It's like war is good for profit. Here's the next rule: peace is good for profit. But
Um,
anyway, so then
yeah.
Quark sees this. Admittedly, I like this alien design. Let's see if we can get because he sees this alien he needs to talk with. Trying to get like a good bit. I don't know. I kind of like her design. She almost looks a little like a Klingon, but like different enough that I kind of like want to see. I don't know. Cool purple hair. Cool like silver outfit. She looks like a kind of classic alien.
Well, good news. We're going to get her two more times in the series.
Yep. But
Once
she
the
base
yep.
this is something that's a little weird because like she basically says she's trying to get a ship to Bajor, and when asked why, she says she found this earring, or she was basically told to smuggle this earring off a planet, and she doesn't know what to do with it. It's a Bajoran earring, and
Well,
Quark
no,
says
no.
he knows
She's
what to
not.
do with it.
sh- She's not trying to find a ship to Bajor. Basically, she says like I could get it here, but now I need to find somebody who can get it further there because I have to head out.
Yeah,
And uh, yeah, yeah. It's not a case of her needing to find the ship to get there. It's like, yeah, she's done her part. She's now basically saying, "Hey, Quark, help me get this further along." Like, and Quark basically probably paid her for it after that because it's like, you know,
no,
from
yeah, yeah.
there it's just like, yeah, yeah.
Well, and I'm wondering because like this is a bit weird. I understand that the Bajoran earrings are a huge significance, and what we kind of late. I think this is the first time they mentioned in this episode. All the earrings are customized to the person. They'll have some sort of
Hmm.
distinctive marking or some sort of uh, part of it that is basically like, yep, this is Kira Narise's earring. This is this person's earring, Kai Wynn's earring, um, and I guess that's cool. But like when she's just like, yeah, I have this earring and it needs to get to a Bajoran, and like I'm sitting here thinking like, so what are the odds that any Bajoran would know any other Bajoran's earrings details? Although we know why someone might know this one.
So
It's a bit weird because right now Quark and this captain lady, she doesn't have a name, she's just captain in the transcript. Uh,
yeah, she doesn't get a name until
they have
the
absolutely no idea. Like I guess that leans into why they can't utilize this information themselves. They have no way of knowing what this information does, but
hmm
it's probably better we just talk about it because there's something here that's a little bit weird for me, but I'm sure we'll be able to hammer it out. But anyway,
So
Quark gets
I
the
was actually
earring.
going to
But yeah, go on, Pike.
I was gonna. So the way I would treat this of like the earring thing of like how do they recognize it? Do you know what incons are in Japan? Uh,
No, I don't.
or there's an equivalent in China as well. I think in South Korea as well. But so Holics, I have an incon. It is a stamp. This stamp has my last name on it.
Hmm.
Uh, and every person in Japan has an incon. In Japan, like anyone who would like have to, so maybe not kids, right? Because they're too young to sign con. But there's a lot of stuff I have to stamp with my incon because that is my signature. For someone who's Japanese, it'll actually have like the characters that are used to write their names on them. So more than likely, uh depending, it might be a case of like you can like Quark probably knows part of the Bajoran language, but he might not know how to really read the names. It could be too complicated for him, especially in the case of like everyone be aware, Japanese names, if they're not written in hiragana, you're gonna have a bad time, like as a foreigner trying to read them because it's
So
like,
I,
what
I
could this
do
technically
I do
mean?
want to point
And
out. So I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself because it's not a name that's on there. It's an insignia, which I guess could be the name, but it might not be. So it's the insignia that tells Kira who this earring belongs to.
yeah,
But yeah,
I would still say like yeah, it's basically an incon of just like yeah, you could. Like,
Yeah, no, I mean
yeah.
that's fair. I guess like what I was simply saying is like the way this kind of comes about is your hand, like you as a non-Bajoran, and you have no idea about its significance, are handed an earring and told
Mm-hmm.
this needs to get to Bajor. It's like, okay, so do I just give it to any Bajoran? Because that's what, like, to me, it seems like she's just told to get it to any Bajoran, right? Like, get this
Mm-hmm.
to Bajor, that's it. And if the person that this earring belongs to, Lee Nollis, is really as important as they think he is, then they would all recognize it. I guess that's true. Like, that's fine. I guess we're gonna get into that. This earring belongs to Lee Nollis. It was smuggled off a planet in hopes that someone would find it and be able to use that information going forward. But for
The
these
reason
two
why it
characters who
works
have
for
no
her.
idea about that, it seems as if like a lot of bad things could have happened to people who didn't like. What if she had thought, okay, the earring's actually not that significant, let me just drop it on the ground or something? Like, I guess my point is
So
these two characters are fully unaware of what really this information is useful for. It's very lucky that nothing happened to potentially compromise this information or get it to the wrong people.
hmm So here's the thing. This is a case of she got handed this by Cardassian, I believe she says. So
No,
it's a
well, she
case of
says,
like,
oh yeah, she did say she got it
yeah,
she said she got it from a maintenance worker on Cardassia 4. That implies it's a Cardassian.
yeah, yeah. So here's the thing. She is probably involved in the underworld, and you really want to be known, like trusted in the underworld. If you're like some sort of courier and such, if you just take money and then dump product, it's like, ooh, that's a bad look for
No,
you as a
100%, 100%.
courier.
I'm not saying she would dump product. I guess
So,
just like,
and
I'm trying to,
we'll
yeah, go on.
we're also dealing with someone who's probably like trying to say just enough to get the like to try and get the best deal for handing this off again, because she's probably still looking to be like, oh, you I don't know it, but I still want another cut of the profit, right? And so she might be trying, like, the information here is very much a thing of like, she they're basically probably playing a game that we just don't have enough context to fully
Well,
understand of
that
how how hmm
so the only thing I think is really damning about this. So she says her line verbatim. Uh, the maintenance worker he asked me to take it to Bajor. Said whoever I showed it to would understand. So there's a lot of
hmm
people on Bajor who probably couldn't utilize this information super well. It gets in the hands of Kira Nerys, quite possibly the most influential. Like she has such power when in the Bajoran government just because she is the liaison to the Federation. She has a lot of resources at her
hmm
disposal to use this information. But if the advice was, hey, smuggle this off of Cardassia 4, get it to Bajor, whoever you show it to would understand. It's like, what if she just like walked up to like a fruit merchant and was like, hey, I was told to give this to like anyone who would understand. Like, here you go. It's like,
hmm
thanks. Oh wow, this is Lee Nollis's earring. I should like call my government official. Maybe in a few weeks he'll be able to he'll get back to me. Like it's like you'd think because she said whoever I showed it to would understand. Was she told to give it to some high level person in the Bajoran government?
yeah.
Like that feels like that would be the order. It's like I needed to get this to some high ranking member of the Bajoran government, right? And that gets Quark to bring the earring to Kira. But she just sort of,
hmm
I guess my issue is the way it's worded. It sounds very much like she could have just given this to some random dude on the street. Oh, there's a homeless Bajoran guy right there. Hey, man, here's this earring I was told to get to the planet. Like, I did my end
Well,
of it. It was a weird order, but
again, she might be like not wanting to say the full thing, like
no, 100%.
how.
That's fair too. That's fair too. They like she's again. I think it's very lucky that Cork didn't just be like, I just need to get to Bajor. That's easy, and then he like mails it off there. And it's like, oh, but like this needs to get
hmm
into a really important person's hands, doesn't it? It's like, yeah, it'd be better if it wasn't just in the hands of some random Bajoran postal worker. But again,
hmm
this is fine. It's just set up, and it ends up working out. Like you said, there might be details behind the scenes we're not super privy to. Uh,
hmm
if something's being smuggled off Cardassia 4 into Bajoran earring, then people might be like, okay, this actually should go to someone important. So that's why Quark goes to Kira, which is the next scene.
hmm
We also get our first scene of what looks like a Bajoran prayer. Kira, or at least like a worshiping ceremony, some sort of thing. Kira standing in front of the shrine, her arms raised. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, sure, like that's how they pray. it's nice that they sort of reinforce this sort of religious aspect of Kira. And then Quark comes in, like, surprise, I'm here, ruining your ceremony. And Kira's just like immediately pissed.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a private prayer time, and the guy she kind of hates the most on the station, but tolerates, just interrupted it. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
They have a bit of a back and forth. Kira's trying to get like her shirt back on because she's like currently in, I guess, an undershirt, which it's just like a white shirt. It's not like inappropriate or anything.
yeah,
And Quark keeps trying to like go into her bedroom and flirt with her, and she gets pissed and she like starts pushing him out, and then he shows off the earring. But like, what's funny is she starts doing a countdown. It's like, you have 5 seconds to tell me what you want. He's like, aren't you gonna offer me a beverage? And she's like, 5, 4. He's like, can we at least sit down? And then he holds up
yeah.
the earring, which completely stuns her because she recognizes it immediately. And he gives it to her, and he says like, oh, consider it. Like, she leaves with the earring. He's like, yeah, consider it a gift. So Quark's in rare form today. He seems very generous.
Um, yeah, it might be a case of like Here's the thing. He's probably thinking like she's pissed. I should probably just leverage this in the future for some leniency.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of
Uh,
what this is. Like, she's not really like. I don't think he can. He's kind of smiling, so I don't know if he like is in the situation of she's pissed. I think he's more in the situation of he's kind of fucking with her.
like, I
Well,
mean
it's like, I mean,
that is a Quark
we've
move.
established this. Quark is a good guy. Deep down, there's a good guy in there. Like
But shitter.
well, he obviously is profit minded first, but the issue is more in the sense of he is like, he probably recognizes, hey, this is a Bajoran earring smuggled off of Cardassia 4. That's not insignificant. Like, that's something that probably should be like someone in the authorities needs to be alerted to. So either
Mm-hmm.
way, we then get another scene. This is a scene that it only really has like one other reference this episode, but it's not a bad scene. I find it kind of funny. Helps reestablish Jake and Cisco as characters.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, Cisco's trying to bond with his son. Jake is like kind of distracted. I want to ask him a question. He's like, "Look, I'm trying. I have some good news." And Cisco's like, "Oh, you passed your algebra test." He's like, "No, it's better than that." And he's like, "Oh, you finally learned how to hit Bob Gibson's fastball." And he's like, "No, better than that." And like, Cisco's throwing all the normal stuff, like, you're something about baseball, something about school. And then Jake is like, "There's this Bajoran girl I want to go out with." And Cisco's like, "Oh, a girl, that's great. Here, and you want advice from your dad on how to ask her out?" He's like, "No, I already asked her out. She said yeah."
No, no, no,
Like,
no, no. You're downplaying what happens. Like, no, Dad, listen. And it's like the first thing you need to know is you shouldn't be afraid of rejection. And it's like then he gets the word in of
yeah. She
like
already said yes, and
yeah,
he's like, "Oh, well, that's wonderful." Like, it's kind of funny because he's like, "I want to give dad advice." It's like Jake's like, "Nah, I'm good, dad." It's like, "Oh, yeah, sure. I guess that's fair." And then of course, like, he's
yeah.
just like, let's see. He's like, "I was wondering if you had any ideas on what we could do. I was thinking of taking her to the Hollow Suites." And Cisco's immediately like, "No, no, 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 no. Hollow Suites? I don't think so.
No, no, no. I know where that goes.
You're too
I've
young to
seen the
take
cleaning
you're
record.
too young to take a girl to the Hollow Suites." And again, like, people make the joke that DS9 is the series that has like no pretense about what the holodecks are used for. And I'm just like, but let's be fair, the Hollow Suites like could do anything. So I mean, that is not a bad
Yeah.
place for a date. It's like, hey, you want to go like kayaking? You want to go like see a movie? Like, we can go to a Hollow Suite and help be like in a 1920s theater or something. I don't know, but like, I just
Yeah,
I
but the
think,
sort of issue that could come up is uh so we see this later. Kira and Dax will go, at one point they're in a hot spring like
yeah,
on this
I know what you're talking about.
planet, but then it's revealed that they're fake, and Kira's like, I don't really like this. They're fake, um
Well,
and it's just like yeah,
I find
yeah.
some of that stuff interesting. We'll actually probably have to get into a little argument about it because there's something that happened in this episode, a line that was like, I know it's something we disagree about with the lore of Star Trek, but
Hmm.
in terms of like the Hollow Suites, right? Like, there's like an infinite number of things you can do that are fun on there. Uh, just put on some parental controls, Cisco. And I know it's Quarks, but you could probably get him to install parental controls. Let's see.
Mm,
But yeah, so he's
okay.
just like, look, you can't take a girl to the Hollow Suites. And he's just like, let's see. Oh, then how about I bring her back to my quarters? He's like, no, 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 you can't bring her back to our quarters. No, you can't bring a girl back to your room. He's like, we're just gonna talk. He's like, you can talk in public. Like Cisco's basically like playing like dad here. It's like, no, you don't need to do anything. It's like, why don't you go on the? Why don't you take her to the like the second floor of the promenade and watch the wormhole open? And Jake's like, that's kind of boring. He's like, when did you start finding that boring? And he's like, when I started going out with girls.
Yeah.
So Jake's grown
I
up.
mean, to be fair, once you see it once, it's like, meh.
Yeah, that's fair. It's like you look out the window. It's like, man, that's a really weird like '90s like 3D CGI effect that just keeps happening right outside our window.
Oh my god. God damn it. God damn it. I mean,
Um,
true.
but
It is
anyway,
a.
their conversation kind of gets cut off by Kira as she kind of comes in with an emergency. And Cisco and her go to the Replomat. Uh, this isn't the first time Aractogeno's mentioned, is it?
No, I'm pretty sure it was brought up before now. Like, it should
Probably,
have
probably.
been.
But anyway, this is the common drink of DS9, Ractogeno, which is basically Bajoran coffee.
No, it's
Um,
Klingon coffee. It's
oh, it's
just,
Klingon
see,
coffee.
here.
That's right.
Yep. That's why eventually the one episode comes up, the one where they pay homage to the original series comes up, and the humans very confused by
Yeah,
the
that's
name
right.
of it.
That's right. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So let's see. I find this a little annoying, mostly because like these two are professionals. But I guess this conversation is a little bit more believable considering that they have become pretty good friends at this point. So
Hmm.
Kira says, "I need to run about," and Cisco says, "For what?" And Kira says, "You really don't want to ask me that, Kira. We need to have a conversation about you asking for things from Cisco and giving the worst fucking answers." Again, we talked about this in duet. It's like, do you think you can be unbiased? She's like, no, but that doesn't matter. And I'm like, Kira, it does matter. I'm sorry. Like, it really does. Can
It
you,
does.
like, if I was in Cisco's shoes, I'd be sitting there thinking, like, Kira, please, just word it better, okay? So I could put something on the report. But this is how you start it.
Hmm.
I'm going to get in so much
Yep.
trouble. But anyway,
Yep.
so he's like, when Cisco's like, it's too late. I already asked, and she's like, you don't want to know the answer. I'm like, Kira, I swear to fucking God. Like, I get it's kind of funny, I get it's kind of charming, I get the point, but holy shit, word this better. Lie if you have to, but like, give a wink and a nod.
Mm.
Anyway,
Listen,
so
listen. Heroes built for stealth, not for deception or persuasion. Okay.
that's a lie. We get a really good lie from her later to this episode. Uh, but so, he says, "Look, I can't let you run about without knowing what's going on." And this is when Kira reveals, she wants to go to Cardassia 4 to rescue a Bajoran prisoner. An earring was smuggled off world, and it belongs to Lee Nollis. He was his victory over Gul Zariel in hand-to-hand combat is one of the greatest stories we have. He's a legend, and right now we need Bajor needs strong leadership, and this is the guy who can help us do that.
Holics.
What?
Uh, Zarael.
Okay, fine.
Zarael.
Oh, I mispronounced the fake
uh,
word. All right. Um. Anyway, his
uh,
Kira makes a point that his body was never found. Uh,
mhm,
but let's see. I wouldn't be asking if she thought there was another way to rescue him. But Bajor ships. This is actually an issue I do have. She says Bajor ships don't have the maneuverability or defensive capabilities to get me safely in and out of Cardassian territory. So so the runabout is something new for DS9. It's brought in later to TNG, I believe, but generally, like TNG had the shuttlecraft, right?
yeah.
Which were like they basically shuttlecraft were essentially, as they were shown off, to basically be like short range travel, not really super fast, but like able to get from system to system in a decent amount of time.
Mhm,
And
yeah.
they were mostly used from going from a ship to planet without transporters. So if you can't use transporters, you have these ships, right? It brings you to the planet and
Mhm,
back, and that's functionally what it is. The runabout is introduced
mhm,
in DS9, and the runabout we do know has warp capability. Uh, we also know that it has transporter capability. They use them to go in and out of the wormhole all the time and explore a little bit beyond there. I don't know about you.
mhm.
I was not under the impression the Runabout was necessarily an impressive ship.
Um, so the sort of issue that comes up is what is the average size of a ship in Star Trek? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Um,
know. I get what you're saying.
and how much power does a ship have based on like size of engine and stuff? It for all like the way I take it is the runabout. It, it's a very because I believe they use it in combat as well from time to time. But runabout, Star Trek, it's one of those things of oh, so here's the fucking problem. It is smaller than a starship, larger than a shuttlecraft. It is just a designation for any type of vessel that is like that. It's got limited weapons and a drive system, but it also has additional living space and the ability to be configured to mission-specific cargo capacities. They are a larger operational range and better weapon capability compared to shuttles, and were capable of speeds up to warp 5, which given how often the number of warp comes up and actually fucking matters, that doesn't fucking matter. They were typically assigned to space station or starships and um. Oh, so yeah, they just were assigned in 20 like I mean inter service in 2368. So I would probably say it is. Listen, don't bring this against a starship. Do not do that. You
No,
will fucking
100%.
die.
Like, I guess, like, in my
But
mind, I had always thought the Runabout, like, not always thought, but, like, I feel like at least from season one, the understanding of the Runabout is it is a warp capable shuttlecraft, right? It's a little bit more
mhm,
useful than a shuttle, like you kind of sort of said. It's more useful than a shuttlecraft, not as useful as a full ship. But
mhm,
I guess like my mind was like, okay, but it's not like a good ship in any right. Like again, you wouldn't want to take this into combat. In fact, I actually looked it up because obviously Star Trek uses a lot of naval terminology. I looked at what like sort
mhm.
of the naval designation for like what a runabout is, and a runabout is a small motorboat holding between 4 to 8 people. Uh,
So, Pollock,
generally used what?
let me give you a warning about science fiction in naval terms. They have no fucking idea what they're doing with naval
No,
terms most of the time.
100%, 100%. What I'm saying, I'm not understand the criticism I'm making. So we haven't been given a really great understanding of what the runabout's capable of, right?
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, but like what could we have theoretically understood about this device or like this sci-fi tech prior to this moment? And generally, if we're basing if they based the name or anything off of like what the more naval term is, it's essentially just a smaller, more maneuverable boat so that they can it's not even necessarily meant for missions. It's generally for naval stuff. It's like, hey, we got to get like to land, and we don't want to maneuver this boat into a port or something like that.
Hmm.
It's a little bit
So,
like you can go like, or we need to go to this island from like a further distance away, but we don't want to move the whole ship, right? It's just an element of like this is a versatile device. Like if we're talking about this in setting that has a lot of capabilities, but
mm,
in terms of like what you're ultimately capable of, going into the gamma quadrant might be pushing it in my mind, right? You can live on this ship for a little while. It has all the technology you need, but if you encounter a threat, don't count on it being a good situation. That's almost what I had in my mind.
so,
And now they're saying,
so,
yeah, go on.
actually finish that because
Well, I
I
was just
might be
saying,
responding to
and now we're essentially saying that this ship is more maneuverable and has better defensive capabilities than any Bajoran ship.
So here's the thing. Um, it's a newer vessel. com- It's almost certainly a newer vessel than anything the Bajorans themselves have, because remember they were primarily fighting, this war, right? Basically a guerrilla campaign. More than likely, the runabout's a newer ship that has it's a jack of all trades sort of vessel, and it can also be optimized per the mission parameters. You know, so it for all we know, O'Brien might have been doing. Oh yeah, spoiler. O'Brien goes on this little adventure with here. For all we know, O'Brien might have been like, "Yeah, I'm putting in certain capability. Like it's
Well, he
modular,
so
right?
I'll say this: he does do that, but you're right. It's modular. That is something that might be an advantage to the runabout. Um,
Yeah.
the
It
way it's just the
it
way it's just
it
worded, I was a bit surprised when I reheard that. I was sitting there like, okay,
yeah.
I guess that's what the runabout's capable of. Again, the way it's oftentimes depicted is it is a small ship that can be done like it's useful for like individual missions, but they're flying to Cardassia 4. Like, it's
Hmm.
really not good if you're caught by Cardassians. Um,
Boy, yeah, that's why they had to get the fuck out later on because like, yeah, we are not equipped for that shit. We need to run. That is our advantage. It's like, yeah,
so,
uh,
so
and did Kira say like it has more speed than anything ever? It's like,
well,
yeah, because
maneuverability. So I guess that could count for speed. But
yeah,
so one thing, basically, they've tested the DNA on the earring. It does belong to Linalis. Kira went to the provisional government first. They also said the same. Like all the ministers she talked to said the same thing. They're not willing to risk war over an earring. Um, and this is
mm,
something that's also a little bit new, although I don't think it's necessarily bad. She says, uh, Kira says, you and I both know the provisional government is made up of political opportunists too busy fighting amongst themselves to care what happens to Bajor. Since the loss of the Kai, the situation has only gone from bad to worse. Reports of factional fighting in half a dozen districts. Religious riots have spread throughout the southern islands. Bajor needs a leader, someone the people will listen to. So, the death of Kai Opaka, we didn't get any of this, but apparently it's been building.
yeah, in the background. We
Not
can
the death.
make
Yeah.
the
I mean,
yeah.
honestly,
There's
this
the
is something
art.
that we kind of criticized about season one. It's like there should have been more as a result of the death of Kai Opaka. She was a
Yeah,
hugely influential person.
yeah.
And I
The
think it's
thing
really yeah.
is, so this is actually something I noticed like reading up on this like three-parter. Um and so with the start of season 2, I believe I mentioned that at the start. This is where they're like, yeah, we're gonna be doing like this is a separate thing from TNG. We are no longer just the weird spinoff. We are our own separate show. And so they can start telling stories that really wouldn't like fit at all in the TNG setting, air
Hmm.
quotes setting
Yeah.
as in like the vessel. And so they're basically making up for lost time because now this is we should have seen this sort of thing happening all throughout season 1, but they were afraid of like alienating the audience that was expecting TNG, and so now they're making up for lost time here, right? And what's happened like this because now they're just like out the gate. It's like, yeah, you're gonna be seeing, to our standards today, a rather tame outbreak of a civil war, but you're going to see a civil war here.
I mean, yeah, like yeah,
Relative,
because the point that Kira's making is Bajor needs a strong leader, and we don't have that right now.
yeah,
So they need someone
uh,
to unite them, and like she believes Lee Nollis is that person.
yeah. Lee Nollis, Lee
Um,
Nollis.
we then get an interrupt from O'Brien. There is this is something that's I guess building. It's going to be more important in the next episode, but
Hmm.
uh, O'Brien finds some graffiti in one of the hallways. Apparently, it's from a group known as the Circle. They are racial supremacists from Bajor. They believe Bajor should be for Bajorans, and all other species are inferior and should be expelled from the planet.
Me sitting here like, didn't you guys lose a war for an occupation for 50 years? How does that factor in your superiority? Is
That's
this like,
that's that's
is,
definitely like fair. Although, like, I guess there could be other elements of like we're morally superior. That I don't fucking know.
see,
Um.
what probably is the thing they do is the North Korean idea of like because the North
Oh, we're
Korean
allowed to make
ver
fun of those
like
because they don't have internet.
yes, but so if anyone's aware like no, like not aware, which is probably everyone, I'm the weirdo who like likes to read up on the weirdo like political stuff because it's just like, yeah, I kind of want to understand why they're so weird. North Korean like uh political doctrine is called juche. I think I'm saying it right. It probably not is Korean, like North Korean, but and there is a good reason to make that distinction. North Korean is and South Korean are very much going different ways due to the isolation of the two from each other, right? But
Mm-hmm.
Juche, based like the racial element there. So, like, let's say fascism or specifically Nazism, right? Nazism is like, oh, the chosen Aryan people, are going to go out and conquer. It's very weird. North Korean, like racism in Juche is more like, we're the victims of the whole world. We've been being on by everyone, which you can make some historical arguments about Koreans getting kicked around, by two nations, but it's less like they're going to be the like mensches who save the world, but instead they're the chosen people of the Kim family, which protects and safeguards them from a hostile outside world. It's and I could definitely imagine that as something like the Bajoran supremacists do instead of like, we are a racially pure, like spiritually pure people who have been unjustly harmed by the
Oh, 100%.
galaxy.
Well, 100%. And also, it doesn't
Yeah.
help that, like, I'm sure this is, like, an idea that would definitely come about when you get more, like, proof of your faith being true, which the wormhole and the
Oh yeah.
prophets, like, it's like suddenly it's like, see, we are, like, better because our religion is actually right, sort of concept, like, as opposed
Yeah.
to a lot of other, like, that's something that would be somewhat interesting to explore in, like, Star Trek, although, like, I believe, I think it's canon that most like Earth religions have basically just like died out. That's I think from the original.
Um.
I think some of that's from the original series. But it'd be interesting to see other religions explored in Star Trek and think of like how does because obviously as time goes on, we see this in the regular world. Technology advances, society changes, and religion becomes a lot less influential. At least it has right now. And
Mhm.
unless we're going to some Dune future where religion becomes really important again, uh, you know, you're probably going to see less religion take hold over a majority of humanity if we started going to the stars. And
Mm.
other aliens would also have their face, and it would obviously be something that would have influenced their culture and their people. But how much of an influence would it still have, as opposed to more of just sort of a background cultural influence? That's something that's interesting.
So
And
here.
for Bajor, it's like still very much prominent, whereas for other cultures, it might
Mhm.
be a lot more passive.
Mm.
I don't know.
So,
I think that would be
um,
interesting.
my take is anytime there's like massive social upheaval of any kind, you will see like what for that time period will be called New Age faiths. Because that's what happened with New Age faith on like faiths, in America and such. We're going through social um
Oh, 100%.
upheaval, like
I'm not saying they would ever
social.
die. I guess I just mean like there's obviously going to be people who turn to those sorts of things. But as you expand to the stars, and even nowadays, as cultures and people become much more socially divergent, in the sense of like
Mhm.
it's a lot less homogenous. Again, that's not a bad thing, but it's a lot less homogenous. You see these. I'm trying to think of a better word. Not like a firm hold, not stranglehold, but like a firm hold of a specific element of culture on most people. You see a lot more influences, and as such, each influence has less control over a deciding factor of someone's character and personality. So going
Mhm.
forward into a sci-fi future, when we're interacting with aliens and we're meeting with all these other people, the individual influences of one thing are not going to be as impactful on the person that applies to religion and faith too, right? Some people it might be incredibly important, and some people it might be a lot more like, oh yeah, my family is Christian, my family is Muslim, my family is Jewish, but as a space force captain who's meeting aliens, I don't have that influence me as much because I'm not on Earth, I'm not around those people, I'm meeting people who are so different from me, and as such, the influence of that is diminishing as time goes on over who I am as a person. And then,
Mhm.
going even further into an almost Star Trek esque future, the amount of things influencing an individual person are all going to be vying for control. Who knows what's going to happen? It might diminish to nothing. It might resurge as something so much more influential. I mean, look at Bajor, right? Their faith is basically like they make a point later on that their faith skyrockets and how much people rely on it post occupation. because
Yeah.
it is something that socially ties the people together. But
Mm,
that's one species, right? Another species might have an entirely separate reaction, right?
mm.
There's like an alternate. I think. I mean, unironically, is that not? I think isn't that explored? I think in the mirror universe where the occupation still happened, but Bajor basically
It,
abandoned its religion.
no, 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 no. So what happened there was the
Well, that's a different
occupation
conversation, but yeah,
happened, but it was not the Cardassians. It was the Terran Empire, that
yeah.
did it because and
But wasn't it but wasn't it that the Bajorans abandoned their faith entirely in that setting?
I
Post
maybe mm, I wouldn't be
so
surprised given what.
we're getting ahead of it. We're gonna have some mirror universe stuff going on later on in DS9. But I distinctly remember one thing about that is that the Kira from the mirror universe doesn't have the Bajoran earring. She at least has
Mhm,
completely abandoned her faith. Either way,
mhm.
so yeah, basically they're talking about this faction has come about. They're causing some issues, and this is more of a build up for the next episode. But
Mhm.
Cisco's not happy about this, and he basically says like, Odo is basically like, look, this is a low security area. This isn't as big a deal that they got here to do this. Any kid with a spray paint can could have done this. And then Cisco's like, yeah, but as of now, Constable, there's no low security areas on the station.
Yeah.
Like Cisco's not happy about this, and in part because I think he
Oh
realizes
yeah.
it's growing into something pretty big. Um,
Yeah. Now that they've gone away with it once, it's like, oh, they're going to get bolder over time. So it's like, yeah,
well, I think it's also Cisco, especially after his conversation with Kira, realizes yeah, this is a problem that could easily cascade. Right, like we're
yeah,
dealing with all these other issues. If we let this one fester, it could be really bad.
yeah.
We then are reintroduced to Dax. She and Cisco are having a conversation. Uh, She reveals that unlike Curzon, she's not interested in baseball at all, which Cisco's a bit disappointed in. And then she kind of reveals, yeah, Curzon wasn't ever as interested in it as he made you think he was. He was kind of just being nice. So,
Yeah.
oof, Dax with the hard truths against Cisco's favorite pastime. It's like, yeah, your mentor, he doesn't like your favorite sport. And Cisco's like, no, he doesn't actually do that.
No.
But
Got it.
so Cisco then goes like, I do like this because Dax is not, Dax is the inferior officer here, right?
Hmm.
But this is a scene where Cisco is clearly going to her for advice, and of course that's
Yeah.
because she is essentially the reincarnation of his mentor. So I do like this. It sort of shows that there is a blurry line there that even Cisco probably needs to almost ignore sometimes. Like, look, I need advice right now. So I get you're my underling. I get that you're not my superior officer, but I need your advice, buddy. Like, it's not even just like friendly advice. He actually needs someone to guide him on this, and I do like that. It shows a level of fallibleness that Cisco's sort of willing to accept about himself, that he needs all this help from someone who practically he's probably hurting his standing with Jadzia in terms of like superiority, right? Like she is
Well,
his under.
in his defense, she is, I think, technically the most senior.
Oh yeah, she
Uh,
says like there's no harm in asking your second in command for advice, but kind of the way this is done is Cisco's acting a lot more almost like unsure of himself, right? Like I don't know what to do. It's not a matter of I want
yeah.
your advice on this course of action. It's I don't know what to do at all. So I need to talk to you about this. And I think it's a really interesting dynamic to explore because Jadzia is not Curzon, but she has Curzon's memories. So, and
Hmm.
again, this is something that fortunately, I think it's explored a lot better going forward. Cisco's relationship to her is obviously always going to be complicated. She is both
Hmm.
his mentor and in a way his mentee. He is supposed to help
Hmm.
her as the superior officer, but he himself needs her as a wise mentor. So it's an interesting dynamic. And it's funny what happens
Hmm.
because Cisco says, "What if I told you I knew someone who could bring stability to Bajor, someone who could unite the factions and give a chance for our job?" And Dax just says, "I'd say give Kira the runabout." And he's just like, so she
Yeah.
already told you about it. Like, god damn it.
God damn it, Kira. This is a normal thing for Kira, honestly. Like,
Well, I
let's
mean,
be fair.
yeah, it's totally funny because it's meant to be funny because Cisco's basically trying to like lead into this like, ooh, this is going to be a controversial conversation. I want to lead into it, and she's like, nah, I'm already like well ahead of the game, Cisco. Just give Kira the runabout. Go ahead, do it. Potentially start a war.
Do it. Do a funny. Do a little
Um,
funny. Do
do a war crime.
Well,
Uh,
hey, no, that's only as a treat.
it's only
That's
as a.
only as a treat.
Well, look, this is her giving him the option to allow the war crimes
I-
for Kira. So really, it's like consider giving Kira the war crime treat. It's not a war crime what she's doing. It's the
Man,
opposite technically.
leave it to the woman who occasionally has like kind of gay moments with Kira to advocate for her to get to do a war crime. Pretty
Okay,
base,
so
supporting your.
here's the thing: people have said that. The showrunner has said that. I've never seen that as their dynamic.
I so my thing is like I could see where you see it, but it's definitely not like yeah
Yeah, I mean,
no. I
I
actually
always
I
interpret
remember
because here's the
one
thing.
episode this
Oh,
past season where they're like they brought it up. I'm like no,
yeah,
they're just
dramatis
good.
personae.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Well, it's like
What?
a lot of what I think people interpret as their flirty moments. And again, I'm fine if they're flirty moments, but it's almost because like Dax is very sexually liberated. You know, every season she's like, "Yeah, I've been dating this weird alien," and like Kira's just kind of like crazy. Like, how can you get past the fact that he has like this huge see-through brain that's just like poking out of his head? And she's like, "I find it cute." Like, she's very much like free love. I'm gonna go date these crazy looking aliens that we never see because the budget can't support it. But
Mm,
it's like Dax is very much like I'm cool with anybody, so that's fine. But it's always Kira kind of just like almost seeming flabbergasted by Dax's like openness about some of this stuff. So I never interpret it.
mhm.
I guess you can interpret some of it as flirting because they do talk about like romantic stuff and they're clearly good friends. But to me, look, I'm just saying it just comes across as gals being pals. But
Yeah, I was being
you know,
pals.
but anyway, so let's see. Cisco kind of agrees. Like, all right, I guess I gotta like give Kira the runabout. He then
Hang on, pause a second. The transition of you going, I just think it's gals being pals, and then you said, and Cisco kind of agrees, and it's like the
true.
transition.
Cisco does. Yeah, Cisco sees it. And look, Cisco's open to that. He's like, look, it's just gals being pals. Um, no, but like back on track. He agrees to give Kira the runabout, and
Mhm,
we get
mhm.
another somewhat comedy scene because well, it's not really a comedy scene. So Dax comes out and she like looks at Kira and like kind of gives a nod. Kira's very happy. She's like, "Yeah, I got my runabout." She actually makes a really funny face. You can't see it on the because I have it on the screen, but it's like at 1423. She makes like a really funny face. I'm using this the thumbnail.
Yeah, dude,
Uh,
don't give a
but
shit. Go
uh,
for it.
Cisco then walks over to O'Brien and says, O'Brien, is there any way that you can? She needs a runabout. Uh, let's see. And O'Brien says, "Oh, well, she's going to Cardassia 4 after all." And Cisco's like, "So is there anyone on the station she didn't tell me? She didn't tell before me?" And O'Brien's like, "Yeah, I don't think she mentioned it to Quark." So it's like,
Yeah,
I get this is kind of funny. I do think it's a little bit like worrisome in terms of like the understanding that this mission is going to be secretive is very like understood. Like if this information got to Cardassia beforehand, it would be really bad.
oh
Um,
yeah,
so if only the superior officers are told, that's fine. But this joke is a little bit like, okay, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Let's see here. Da, da, da.
don't
All right,
matter.
so
None of it matters.
Cisco says like, look, is there any way you can prevent the Cardassian sensors from picking up the runabout signature? O'Brien spouts some technobabble and says that he can have the ship read as a Lecipian transport, which is like, sure, I guess you could do that. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah, but
this
so
gives yeah, go on, say it.
I was gonna say there's probably transponder signals being sent out to ID like every like this is part of the issue with the idea of space piracy. Every ship, because you cannot really visually ID things, like you can but you can't in
Well,
space due
their
to
detecting range would be so much further than visual range. So like, you know,
yeah. So you need these transponders and like kind of like known signatures for your ships so that other ships can like ID you and be like, okay, that's a ship that's allowed to be here, rather than, oh, that's a ship that's not supposed to be here. We're not gonna fucking chance it, blow it out
no,
the sky, out of space.
I'm not saying it's impossible. My criticism was because initially Kira's like, I need a runabout to go to Cardassia. Okay, I guess
Mhm.
again, I guess we'll just agree that the runabout is capable of making that trip and doing it in a way that no Bajoran ship could. Fine, let's accept that. Now
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of told, oh, for this mission to kind of be successful, you need to be able to do this to the ship, O'Brien. And O'Brien's like, yeah, I can do that. It's like, so Kira is basically willing to take a ship that, as far as she knew, wouldn't really be able to do the mission until O'Brien modified
Mm-hmm.
it. But like O'Brien hadn't confirmed he could modify it yet. So it's kind of one of those things where I'm like,
Yeah.
again, it just kind of leads a little bit more to, yeah, we're getting into the situation where technology wise, I think they made a little bit of a flub here. They really probably should have
I just
thought of this.
realized something.
Yeah.
So you know how it was a Cardassian who gave the earring to the woman who took it to Quark? And then after this whole
Supposedly.
mission happens, yeah. I'm gonna get into that. This is my conspiracy theorist brain is realizing something. Um, was it always just the plan to let Lee Nollis get away and see if that would cause further chaos amongst the Bajorans to some degree? Uh,
So I actually have the
so,
opposite point of view. Um,
mm,
that could be something, but we'll talk about that at the end because there's something that happens at the end of this episode that's very interesting, or not actually the end of the episode, halfway through the episode. Uh, we'll
mhm,
we'll we'll talk about that because I think there's an interesting interpretation of that might change how we view a certain character. So,
mhm,
uh, they get the runabout. Let's see here. And but Cisco does make the command. He's like, "Look, you're like Kira, this is your mission, but you're taking O'Brien with you." Uh, and Kira's like, "Look, if a Federation officer's found doing this, it's going to be a lot of trouble for you." And he's like, "That's right, it is. Uh, but O'Brien's a better pilot, and I want this mission to be successful. It's just as important for the Federation that Bajor has a strong leader as it is for you."
mhm.
So, I do like this. It's just an element of like Cisco basically kind of acknowledging like, yeah, I get it. This is your kind of like rogue mission that you want to go on, but I'm fully behind it because I need it too. The Federation's desperate to get Bajor into the Federation. We really need this. We need Bajor to be successful. Or
It
at
would
least,
be funny if he was like,
he needs Bajor to be successful because for him, it's his whole mission.
It would be funny if he was like, "I need this to happen." She's like, "For Bajor? No, because it's funny. Funny. Make the Cardassians look bad. That's a highlight
See,
of my day."
that would be O'Brien's motivation. O'Brien's motivation for going
Oh,
on
that's
this is
true.
a,
That is an O'Brien. That's an O'Brien.
whoa,
Yeah.
I can embarrass Cardassians and kill a bunch of them? Pog.
I mean, to be fair, O'Brien and Cisco do get along really well at the end of the day. Like, very much like the engineers they are both. Oh my lord! The only difference is one's an officer. Like when you get to the end of the series, you start to realize, like, wow, both are family man engineers who
Oh
committed
yeah,
war
no, that's
crimes,
that's
huh?
super that's super established like last season essentially. Like, look, they're family men, they're engineers. Obviously they have maybe different backgrounds, but there's a lot that they can kind of bond over. They're both fathers. I mean, I think it's something that's an underappreciated like subtle dynamic, and it's not really stressed. I wish it was more, but like they're two people who are like, yeah, they have a lot in common, and I think they understand each other because of that. Now we get to something that I actually do
Yeah.
find a bit problematic. They get on the
Hmm.
ship, and Kira makes a point that this mission can only end one of two ways: either we bring back Lee Nollis, or we don't come back at all. So,
Hmm.
um, O'Brien going on a suicide mission essentially, because either we're successful or we die, right? Like that's the implication.
Hmm.
O'Brien's a family man; he has a wife and kid.
Yeah.
I feel like he'd be a little bit more
Yeah.
hesitant to go on suicide missions. Obviously he agreed to a station on like the frontier, so he's okay with some level of risk for himself. Um,
Hmm. So
but
counterpoint: have you eaten Keiko's cooking? Any man will want to die.
okay, ouch. Like she might be a very good cook for all we know. Um,
No, no,
but
no. The one time we saw him eating it in TNG, he was making a weird face because he wasn't used to it. But now I'm just taking that to me like, oh, he doesn't
hey,
like her
hey,
cooking.
she just started being she just started cooking for her husband. It's been years. I'm sure she's gotten better. The point being, I don't think it's reasonable for O'Brien to go on this mission as a suicide mission. Um, I mean, unironically, we see that in real life. Like a lot of people, like yeah, I could do risky missions because I don't really have a family to go back to, but the
Mm.
officers who do have families, or the enlisted who do have families, they request safer, stations. Like literally, Cisco at the start of the series is being transferred from a safe position that he took after his wife died because he wanted to make sure he was there for his son.
Mm-hmm.
Like he transferred to a safer,
Yeah.
more low stakes position because he wanted to make sure he was there to help raise his son. Then he's transferred to DS9, not really by his choice. And he stays here because he
Yep.
realizes the importance of the work. So you have Cisco who actually says, like, look, I have a son to think of. I can't be like, on the frontier of space anymore. That's too dangerous. Meanwhile, like
Mm-hmm.
O'Brien is like, nah, man, suicide missions every day. My daughter can raise herself. Keiko's gonna make a great
Got a
single mom.
mom. She got a mom. Yeah. Yes. Like the day they found out that they were having a child, you just know. O'Brien had to hold back, say, "You'll make a great single mom when I die."
When I die on a suicide mission that I willingly chose to go on, you're gonna get such a payout. O'Brien just has like a huge life insurance policy, and he's
No,
like, "Look, I just
no,
want to die and get it to my kid."
no, no, no. So uh, even like in the times where it was like really good, supposedly, like World War II, it's like, yeah, no, you were not actually buying a farm, but now it's like, well, first off, why would there be insurance policies? It's the future where money apparently doesn't exist in the Federation to the
That's
point
that's
that,
fucking true.
yeah, like, what do you just get emotional torment? That's your payout.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's not like you need anything, so I guess that's not like a big deal. You got like a nice flag, I guess. Here's the flag of the
Oh God,
here's the Starfleet flag.
oh my.
It's a nice one.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh, that
god, that's
reminds
fucking
me.
dark.
I told you
Maybe you
about
get like
the
some cool coupons for like I don't know. I don't know what you don't need money. It's so confusing. You don't get anything. You get like a
yeah.
nice medal.
Uh, I was about to say. I told you about the training a bunch of like the army's trying to get a bunch of people to do, didn't I?
No,
Um,
but I'm not in the army, so I wouldn't
the
know.
it well yeah. Well, I had seen news about it. Basically someone in the military had leaked it. Apparently they're trying to train more people for actually doing that duty of going to visit the families when that happens.
All right, so that's
Which
really fucking
given
dark.
yeah, yeah. Everyone, be ready to hide your draft number. Be ready. Um,
Well, despite the fact that last episode we talked about creationism versus evolution, I feel like that might be one of the more controversial things, politically charged things we're saying.
I just what's contra? I'm making people aware. I'm like, yeah, there's a good chance.
You
There's
told
a
them to
good.
hide their draft number, Pike.
Listen, listen. Okay, let me coach that in. Don't hide your draft number. Just hope you get a good number.
This was a
Okay.
me. This was a meme, everybody. This was totally a
This
meme.
was a meme. FBI man, this is all in Minecraft. I am playing Minecraft right now.
You're not even in
Do
the
not.
United States. You don't have an FBI man right now.
No. I probably almost certainly do because it's like, do you know how many Americans were like radicalized while they were living abroad and shit, and then went to go fight for those groups who were fighting in the Middle East? Even if it is Japan, it's like they are probably keeping an eye on me. Actually, no, I know for a fact. At the very least, the nearest consulate should know that I'm here in where I live because I
That's
basically
fair.
got pushed to tell them like, hey, in case an emergency happens, like in Japan, and people need, like Americans need to be evacuated, I'm here. Yeah,
I'm trying to
yep.
understand. Yeah, I'm trying to understand how big a runabout is. Like I'm looking at the image of it.
I
Like
I
I know
have
we have.
no.
Well, I know we have like we have
Yeah,
like actual canon layouts of the runabout. They're sizable. Um,
yeah,
they have like four rooms. One is kind of like a meeting slash dining room. One is the deck that we see them like piloting, and then there's like a bedroom, and then there is I think a second bedroom honestly, and then like theoretically any of these spaces could be converted for cargo. Um,
yeah.
but it's sizable. Unironically, like it's kind of like a flying apartment. There's probably people in the Star Trek setting who buy these ships and they kind of just live on them, like shipping cargo. And it's like, yeah, this is
Oh
my
yeah.
life. I live on this ship and I ship cargo from planet to planet, and it's good living. Unironically, that seems like it would be kind of just like chill. But
I mean, yeah, we can actually guarantee that there are people who do. Well, no, they do that on the auspicious of it being a cargo, a Lesbian cargo. I was about to say like Kira lies and say that they're transporting cargo, but they specifically they're supposed to look like a Lesbian transport
yeah,
ship, like
well,
not a runabout.
so uh,
Yeah.
they get scanned when they're flying towards Cardassia, and let's see. I'm trying to see if like because they say a time at one point. They're like because they say they're about 30 minutes out from Cardassia 4. Uh, they don't. Yeah, there's no indication of how long they've been gone, but um,
Mm-hmm.
they're scanned. O'Brien believes it's a routine scan, but then they're being hailed, and it's a good situation. There's a lot of good acting here. It's unfortunate again I can't really convey it, but there's a lot of good acting, a lot of good tension. Uh, but O'Brien concludes they are beyond visual communication, so hailing them will only be auditory. Which, sure, I guess that's a scientific fact now in Star Trek is like visual images can't be seen as far as like auditory. Again, I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
So they open up a channel, and they want them to identify themselves, like, oh, we're a Lecipian transport. However, because of the like hack to make them look like a Lecipian transport, it makes it so their like power fluctuations are like all screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
In doing so, the Cardassian transport offers to repair their ship. Like, hey, we can come out and repair you, which is like interesting because like I think even Kira's kind of surprised, like, oh, now they're deciding to be helpful. Like, thanks guys, like because they don't want these
It's
people to come there.
no, no, no. That's literally like any time there's like a heist or anything, it will get fucked over by like one of the guards actually being nice. But I can actually make an argument of why, like, it's not just out of the goodness of their heart that they're doing this. They don't want a ship puttering around, even if it's perfectly harmless. They don't want to like risk it being an actual like spy or anything, or a it exploding or something, and suddenly it's like, oh fuck, we're gonna have
I
to
mean,
fill out so much fucking
so
paperwork.
obviously there's the selfish element here, but the way it's kind of presented is like, do you require assistance? Because if it was one of those things where it's like, oh, you're actually having these like fluctuations, we're not giving you a choice here, buddy. We're coming to help repair you or at least evaluate you, so we don't have to like, we're dotting our I's right now, right? But they're
Yeah.
actually kind of just being nice. Hey, do you want assistance? We can dispatch a repair ship. Like, I mean, Cardassians are obviously very much antagonists in this series. That being
Hmm.
said, like this series does go a long way to show that they're first off, not all of them are bad. Second off,
Yeah.
like they have different morals, but they're still not terrible people. So
Well, not
like
morals, ethics. Ethics. Remember,
well,
ethics, not
I even
morals.
mean morals. Like some of them have like pretty bad moral. Like what I mean is like I was actually saying I meant it more in the sense of the individual Cardassians could be good people, but the
Hmm.
system of governments that they structure that they live under, the way of life that they have, definitely makes them antagonistic and have like values that are antithetical to the good values of the Federation, the good values of Bajor. So, for
Hmm.
them, it's like, oh, someone needs help. Why wouldn't we help them? It's like, oh, but you're Cardassians. Like, yeah, like we have different political views, but like I'm not going to let you die in a ship if that's malfunctioning. Like I'm not a monster.
Yeah, well, to be fair, we saw that all the way back in TNG with their first
Yeah, 100%.
portrayal because uh hey everyone, just so you're aware, I remember we mentioned in the first episode, Gold Cost actor Mark Alamo, he played the first commanding Cardassian we ever saw in TNG, Gul Macet, who's then later canonized as being a cousin to Gold Cod. But anyways, Golma said, while a little duplicitous, probably, like to some degree, he's shown to be like very human and like actually like, oh, he just saw many of his countrymen be destroyed by a rogue Federation agent, and he's rightfully angry. He might uh whether it was like a justified or not attack on those Cardassians. It's like, yeah, and also the fact of like he does his best to work with Picard, and when the issue comes up with one of his subordinates, possibly trying to spy on their torpedoes or anything. It's like he just calls it out. Like, I don't care if you meant well by it. You should not have been doing it in the first place. You have jeopardized what we're doing with the Federation here.
Yeah,
Like,
if nothing else, the
yeah,
Cardassians are always shown to be complex. But if you encounter someone who is like on the side of the road and their car's malfunctioning, it's like they're not against helping somebody.
yeah.
Oh, it's like raining super loud by me right now. That might be picked up by the mic. That's not a big deal. It's a nice calming background noise, hopefully. One thing I do
Mm-hmm.
find a little bit issue with this sort of scene, it's hard to do that, is every time the like Cardassians like make a comment, Kira will like mute the mic and then make a comment to O'Brien, and there's like a pause, obviously. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty suspicious. If you're having a conversation with someone and every few minutes they're muting the mic and taking forever to respond with short responses, you're like, what are you doing? Like, it's very clear you're having a second conversation while having a conversation with me, buddy. Like,
Well, I think Kira's if I recall, her language is very much like we are. Like, being clear that,
oh yeah, like
uh,
she's not pretending that they're alone. She's saying, oh, we're a Lissibian transport, and I just think it's just like maybe it's just standard like protocol. Like, yeah, you wait for a response and it might take a bit because they're conversing. But if you're trying
yeah.
to say, hey, your ship's kind of damaged, and then there's a long pause and they're like, no, we're good. It's like, oh, I mean, okay, are you sure you don't need help? Long pause. No, we don't need help. It's like, all right. Are you sure? Because your power is
Okay.
still fluctuating very dangerously. Long pause. Again, we're fine. It's like okay, like we're kind of having a conversation here, ma'am, but like it feels like you're taking a long time to come up with pretty basic responses,
Are you taking the
right?
piss out of me? Is that what you're
Well,
doing?
it's almost like if this was me, if I was this Cardassian, and again, maybe it's just again, I don't know what standard procedure is. For all we know, there literally could be a delay in the information because of the distance they are from each other.
Oh, that's true.
But like the to me, it's like I'm sitting there like, you know, the amount of time she takes to come up with a basic response is a little suspicious, right? It'd be like if you were walking down the street or if you were walking inside a building and someone looked up to you and says, "Hey, like, what are you doing here?" And you took like 30 seconds to respond. Oh, I was invited here.
Mm,
It's like, okay, buddy, but it took you 30 seconds to come up with that response. I don't believe you. Like, it's very clear you're lying. But again, it's just fine. And what happens, I do like it because they're very insistent. And then Kira basically comes out and says, hold on, I want to find the exact lines. Um, hold on, where is it? Oh, she's like, he's getting suspicious. I believe we can correct the problem on our. Then she cuts in. I believe we can correct the problem on our own, and then she sort of like leans into the mic. Besides, Gul Marayan or Gul Marian is waiting on Cardassia 4 to receive my shipment of roulotte seeds. Any delay could ruin the entire crop, not to mention the Gul's mood. There's a delay, and then the Cardassian on the other end is like, understood. You can put in for repairs after you deliver your cargo. Like, very clearly, she plays the realm of like, you don't want to piss off your superior, right?
well,
And
not his superior, but any
well,
sort of like
yeah, well,
higher
it's a
officer.
Gull, right? So theoretically, it's a superior to him. It's a superior officer.
Yeah.
And O'Brien's just like, uh, after they cut the transmission, he's like, "Who's Marion?" And she's like, "Don't ask me. I just made him up."
God damn
Which,
it.
again, you could easily read that as a huge contrivance that she made up an officer and he just believed it. But what I would use as a defense, Kira has been fighting the Cardassians for a long time. She knows how they think. She knows that Gull. Like if you piss off a Gull, they could ruin your career, right?
Mhm.
So there's an element of like, all right, do I stop this ship and potentially piss off a Gull, or do I pretend I never saw it? And if it does lead to some problem, it's not my fault.
Mhm.
Unironically, Kira knows the Cardassians well enough. I can see her understanding that enough to make that lie. Right?
Oh yeah,
She
absolutely.
knows exactly what to say to get this guy to finally leave her alone. It's a risk, but it's a calculated risk.
Mhm. Listen. She's banking on this guy just being an E4, part of the E4 mafia. He's just doing his job, and he was gonna be nice this one day. And she reminded him that, you're E4 mafia. Don't stick your neck out. Avoid the superior's attention. Okay?
Yep.
Okay.
And then they get to Cardassia 4 and they start scanning for Bajorans, hoping to find Lenalis. and they find dozens of Bajoran life signs. Um, the Cardassians swore to the Federation that they had shut down all their labor camps, but apparently that is not the case.
Well, even if it was just Lee Nollis being held there, it's like it's still he. But this is just full on like,
Yeah, because
oh, this.
they said they shut down all their labor camps and released all their prisoners. So even just Lee
Yeah.
Nollis is a huge issue. But having a full labor camp is like, oh, you violated the treaty. You are in clear violation of the treaty.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know the system is, but this is Cardassia 4. Presumably, that's in the more inner circle of the Cardassian Empire, right? Like,
Um, potentially that. So I would assume like so. There's two ways this could go about. They could be saying like, oh, and our so it would be like if we called every planet in the solar system like, oh, uh Terra 1, Terra 2, Terra 3, Terra 4. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Or but that seems very weird for because they probably had cultural names for the planets beforehand. Like, oh, we call them Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. I'm fucking up the order. I'm too fucking tired for that.
Well, look,
But
it
you
doesn't.
know what I'm
Yeah, I get what you're saying 100%. What I'm simply saying is like, presumably, if this is Cardassia 4, it is given a pretty low number and name. It's likely one of the planets Cardassia has colonized, probably the fourth
Oh
planet.
yeah, one of the first one. Yeah,
Uh,
very rarely.
as such, as it's either the fourth planet in their system or it's the fourth planet they colonized. Either way, I don't believe that
No,
they'd be able to
wait,
say
wait,
this
wait,
was an.
wait. No, no, no. No, no, no. What happened was this was the fourth colony that was named after Cardassia itself because some idiots were not keeping track of like what planets were being named. So, four different expeditions went to planets and just called them Cardassia 4, and it's just like, oh yeah, you happen to be the fourth one we rediscovered out there. Like,
No, no. Well, so I'm gonna take the most the best faith the best faith one is either this is the fourth colonized planet from the Cardassia Empire, or it is the fourth planet in the Cardassia system. So the issue with that is if there's a labor camp on there, you should have known this existed. Like this isn't like you're an empire of like 100 worlds, and on like the furthest, most remote planet, there was a small war crime violation, and you can easily write that off as we as the government didn't know, and as such, we're not fully responsible. We're addressing the situation, right? It's like because what happens later on in this episode is Cardassia basically says like, "Oh yeah, we totally didn't know that camp was there. We do apologize. It's being shut down now, and we're investigating how this was allowed to continue." Right? It's like the political response of we fucked up, but we're not taking responsibility.
hmm
But it's on Cardassia 4. I don't believe you. Again, it would be the equivalent of like Earth or humans have like a multi-planet empire, and yet there was this war crime happening right on Earth, right under our nose, and we didn't know about it. It's like, are you serious? No, we don't believe you. Like,
there's
regardless,
something I want to say here, but I'm not gonna say it. I'm
don't
not
say
gonna
it.
say it.
Don't say it. So they land on Quarry World, which is just the default world they always land on in Star Trek. Uh,
Yeah.
they find all these Bajorans are like digging in the dirt. It looks fine. It's a little silly. But if this is like an undermanned like encampment, I'd say it's fine. Now the thing that's I don't know how I necessarily want to treat this. It's a little weird. O'Brien walks up to the camp boundaries with Kira, and Kira's basically asking him like, "How do I look?" And he's like, "You're irresistible to Cardassian." Uh, Unironically, we know that there's a little bit of flirtation between these two later. So the fact that he's probably saying this is a little bit like, I wonder if he actually finds her attractive right now. But
Uh, I mean, I'll be honest. Like,
oh yeah, she's
I'm sure
attractive. I
nowadays.
guess I just mean like the way
Yeah.
he words it is funny because he's like, un like hold on, I want to see if let's see. I doubt there's a Cardassian alive who could resist you.
hmm
He's giving her a nice compliment, but it's just done very
Yeah.
casually. So I don't know. I kind of like it. They get to the boundary of the
Yeah.
encampment, and basically they are presenting it as Kira is a prostitute that the gull of the encampment has already ordered, and O'Brien is her pimp. That is how they are playing this off.
I mean,
She's like, look, he
to
doesn't.
be fair,
He's like, we
O'Brien can
want to see.
definitely be the sleaze pimp. He can be
He
the
play
sleaze
they,
pimp.
they play both of them play it well. It's actually a very funny scene to see like Kira's playing like the flirtatious, like doesn't really care. She's just here to do a job, and O'Brien's playing the salesman. Like they do it pretty well. And he's like, can't you see she has an appointment? Look at her. And I'm not gonna lie, like they're like, look at her.
Slap her
Can't
on
you
the
see?
ass.
Can't you see she has an appointment with the overseer? And I'm sitting there like, dude, she's not wearing anything revealing. I don't believe you. Like if she really was a lady of the night, turning tricks, she'd be wearing something much more revealing than this. But it's a show that's
Get
like geared towards all audiences, so they can't show slutty Kira.
me sitting here wanting and just thinking we had a
Kira
Ryan
in the
Slave Girl
Star
outfit.
Wars, Kira in the slave Leia
Oh,
bikini.
Ryan Slave Girl outfit.
But
God.
so they do a good job of convincing, and the Cardassian who like stops them is like one of the guards, and he's like, "How much for how much for some of her time as well?" And she's like you could afford me." And I'm not gonna lie, this Cardassian looks so thirsty for her.
As he said, he used to be stationed on Bajor. He, and that's just like, oh no,
Let's
oh,
see.
oh,
Yeah, he's
got
like, "What does
that
it cost?
rich tutor.
What does it cost for an appointment?" And she's like, "More than you could afford." And O'Brien's like, "2 strips of gold pressed latinum, and she's all yours." So that's how much Kira's worth. We now know. An appointment with Kira is 2 slips of gold pressed latinum.
Hmm.
Let's see. She's being very like bratty, and he's like, "Yeah," or the overseer's like, "Yeah, she needs some discipline." Uh, he's like, "All right, here, give me like here, I'll allow you to sample the merchandise if you just litter into the force field." And he's like, "All right." So he shuts down the force field briefly and lets Kira walk through, but puts it back up right before O'Brien can walk in. And then Kira kicks his ass and takes his clicker and his gun, and they're basically leading the assault. We'll talk about this in a second. Hold on. So Kira runs, grabs a lot of the Bajorans who are slaves. She finds Leonalis. She says that he's like, "How did you know I was here?" She's like, "We found your earring." Apparently, some of the other members of the camp are the ones who smuggled the earring out. They stole it and smuggled it. He seems very surprised and uncertain about this. And they start making their escape, trying to get as many of the Bajorans with them as they can. I want to point out, when you see the Cardassians chasing them, they're running through a flat quarry. They're dead. Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
there's no cover. You're running away. Like, these Cardassians all have guns. Even if they're set to stun, like, you're not getting away. But they managed to escape, hide behind a rock. Some of the Bajorans willingly say, "We're going to stay behind. We'll hold them off. The Cardassians chasing us off while you escape." And they say, "We're doing this for you, Leonalis." Leonalis does not seem super happy about this, but he's basically kind of forced to do it by the other Bajorans. Kira and O'Brien escape with the other Bajorans, and they get back to the runabout. Again, apparently the runabout can have a lot of people on it. I'm fine with that, but it's a little surprising.
Yeah.
O'Brien's getting ready to take off, and this is another issue I have. Again, we'll get to it in a second. He's basically like, Kira wants to wait for more of the Bajorans to sort of hurry up and arrive, but like, she wants to keep waiting, and O'Brien basically says like, we have 2 Cardassian warships entering atmosphere. Let's see. I'm trying to find like the exact lines. Where is it? It's like, so they're getting the prisoners on the ship. They're like, "Look, we have an ETA of like 2 minutes before these Kardashian warships are on top of us. We have to go now." I'm trying to find it. 1 minute 30 seconds. Yeah, it's 2 Galler class warships is what they're called. So Kira wants to keep holding off, but eventually, like, O'Brien's like, "We leave now or we never will." Kira's like, "Okay, take us home," and then they escape. The next scene is them arriving at DS9. So I have a lot of issues with this scene. I don't think this is a great scene. I think it's fine for the episode. It doesn't damage it too much. But first off, you're in a runabout, and 2 Galler class warships are less than a minute from being on top of you. I don't think you'd be able to escape. I mean, I guess technology, we could just say the runabout's faster than these ships. As long as you have a head start, you're never going to be caught. Fine. It's a bit odd though to me. And also there's the idea of like, you get into the camp and you immediately start attacking the guards. like to me, it makes the Cardassians seem a little incompetent. The best we can say is that this camp is really understaffed. Like they have like
Mm.
10 guards. One of them's taken out immediately. The rest are just trying to get their shit in order before most of the Bajorans are gone. I think it's fine, but the logistics are definitely questionable. And honestly, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
terrible, but like you needed a better plan, Kira and O'Brien. You both are officers. You both are military like vets. You needed a better plan. No one
So
died. No one died, fortunately, I guess. But it's a very questionable.
So what I was gonna say is, the runabout is built for speed, while a starship is built for one. It probably takes longer to rev up those engines. They're probably expecting you have to come in like guns blazing because it's like, oh, there's a fucking emergency. Get over there. It might be an attack, or like a full attack of some kind. Um, but the runabout is built for, I get you there fast and I get you there quick. No, it
No,
might
I
be a
mean,
bumpy
I get.
ride.
Look, if we just say the runabout is faster than these like two Galler class warships, I'm fine with that. Um,
Yeah.
I feel again, this is kind of the first time the runabouts have been given this distinction as such a useful like ship. Again, prior to this,
Hmm.
they seemed like they were more of like a small sort of utility vessel that is capable of going on missions, but generally they're low stakes missions, right? I don't think we've seen it do anything this drastic. But
Hmm.
if they say they can do them, they say they can do them, right? Uh, unironically, I think part of the issue is the series was initially built on the idea of it's not about a starship flying through the galaxy, right? It's about a space
Hmm.
station. They have these ships as a convenience so they can go to other planets and do those sorts of things. It's season 3 that they
Hmm.
fully acknowledge we need a spaceship to be able to do some of the plot lines we want to do. Hence the creation of the Defiant, right?
Yep.
But I guess like this is one of those situations where I would have been if they had a if they had the Defiant to do this mission, I'd believe it 100%. As it is now,
Mm.
it's a little bit like I guess the runabout can do that. I'll buy it. I think it might hurt some narrative stakes for me, but I'll buy it. And then of course there's the issue of like the plan you run through an empty quarry, you didn't get shot from Cardassians that had a high vantage point and saw you running across an empty field. All right, fine. I think it's not very believable. I don't. This is probably the worst scene in the episode. It's not that bad. It's not great though.
Mhm.
Although one thing I do like, and this is something that's a little bit counter to something we learn later on in the episode, which is Lee Nollis, as some people are trying to stay behind to defend him, he's like, "No, I won't allow it," and like, "No, we got to get you off planet. That's what's important." And then as they're trying to escape, he's like, "Major, you can't leave those men behind." Unfortunately, they do have to leave those men behind because they have to escape. So Lee Nollis, very much fitting the idea we have of him as a war hero. He cares about his men, right? He's sitting
Mhm.
here thinking like, "You can't just save me and not save these people." Unfortunately, that's the reality. But we'll put a pin in that because it's a little interesting.
Mhm.
Anyway, we had to drink some water. They get back
Mm.
to the
Drink work.
they get back to the ship. They need medical attention very quickly. Kira walks into Cisco's office, and oh, Cisco's on a call with Gul Dukat.
Mm.
So very surprised, like, oh shit. Okay, this is a bit worrisome. And Dukat mentions, like, Major, I've just informed Commander Cisco that Cardassian High Command has issued a formal apology to the people of Bajor. Kira's a bit surprised. Dukat says, we had no idea that there were Bajoran prisoners still being held on Cardassia 4. Such detentions are in direct violation of the Supreme Directive 2645, and I assure you the camp prefect will be chastised accordingly. Kira's like, what about the prisoners? Like, they're already en route to Bajor. And she's like, well, I look forward to the safe return. He's like, and I do too. And I hope our quick response to this unfortunate situation will provide you, will prove once and for all that Cardassia is no longer your enemy. Kira's surprised. Cisco's surprised. They hang up on the phone. And Cisco's like, look, I'm not sure what their motives are, but until we can figure them out, let's just be grateful all the prisoners have been returned safely. Congratulations on your successful mission, Major. So remember when we made the point of a Cardassian may have smuggled the earring?
Yeah.
I think it was Dukat.
Oh yeah. Like, well, yeah. That can go with what I was saying. Like because my point there was, oh, oh, this could all just be a plot to stir shit up in Bajor further, because now we have another voice that's going to split the Bajorans up and cause them to infight further. And like saying, "Oh, it was Dukan who did it," it's like, well, that doesn't really change like my point of like, oh, you fuckers are gonna, shitters are gonna shit,
So,
right?
so the reason I disagree with you on this point is I think this was actually Ducat being nice. We know Ducat has this warped view of his relationship with the Bajoran people. He is not
Oh
happy how
yeah,
he's viewed. We'll get into that more, but I
there's a
believe,
specific episode we need to get into it about, and it's way in the
yeah.
future.
But one thing I want to talk about here, right, is I think Ducat presents himself as the lesser of two evils a lot of the time. We'll get to it a lot more as we explore his character more, but he is not a good person, but he views himself as a better person than most of his Cardassian brethren.
hmm
I think this might have been one of those situations where he is trying to somehow make amends to prove that he is not the enemy of the Bajoran people. And in part, this is also probably a huge political move, right? For all we know, the overseer of that camp was one of his political rivals that he basically just got
Oh
chastised.
yeah.
Like, hey, I smuggled this earring off. It gets to Bajor. Federation and Bajor do this mission. My political rival is embarrassed by our government. I look my involvement in it is zero, but I handle the situation diplomatically and perfectly to prevent a war. That probably looks good on
hmm
Ducat. But also,
Yeah.
like, I think Ducat might have actually been against the idea of this camp. We later learned that he doesn't really like a lot of this stuff that goes on with Bajor. He kind of wants to cut a lot of that off. He's like, look, I don't want us to enslave Bajor anymore. We're done with that. Let's move to a different direction. He's not a good guy, but
Yeah.
I
His
this
thing,
could
so
yeah.
very complicated because he's very much the guy who, um. So as we said, he has a warped view of his part because he always talks about all the good times, and it's like early on we saw an Odo moment that really like sets the
Yeah.
stage for that, where he's like, I remember our late nights playing this card game, and he's Odo corrects him like, we played it once and you cheated, as I remember, and like he has this vision that really aggrandizes himself while brushing over any negatives he does, and it's like, yeah, if he is if he could do what they were doing during the occupation, but also be thanked for it by Bajorans, despite it being very much a thing he shouldn't be thanked for, he absolutely would.
Well, and
Uh,
this is a bit of spoiler for his character. I don't know if I want to go too much into this because again, it's kind of using information we don't have for this episode to talk about it. But
hmm
what I would say is Ducat, I believe, was the second or third overseer of the Bajoran occupation.
uh, it had to
Un-
be. It was 50 fucking years.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, but under him, he makes a point that Bajoran deaths dropped by like 60 or 80%. He views
I mean,
himself as
hmm
the lesser evil, and he's annoyed
hmm
that he's not appreciated for that. Now, again, I'm not
hmm
saying you should appreciate a lesser evil of two evils, right? But in his mind, he was better than the alternative, but he is demonized just as much. That is something we later learn about his character. He is not happy about that. This is a situation where, again, I can very much see him being involved in the smuggling thing. I think that's mostly just a
hmm
theory, a Star Trek theory. But I think the way he solved this, again, it was done. He responded incredibly quickly, almost as if he knew it was going to happen, right?
Oh yeah.
So there's an element of like maybe he was somehow involved in this, but what would be the advantage for it? It's like, well, I think one of the advantages is he embarrasses maybe a political rival. He looks good to the Federation of the Bajoran Empire. He looks good to his own government, brushing over what could be a very messy political situation. Like, he gets what he wants, and all they lose is a labor camp that probably wasn't really that necessary. That's another thing we got to talk about because that's another huge issue with this episode. We saw them having Bajoran slaves, but let's be fair, it's a sci-fi future. Why the fuck do you need Bajoran slaves?
To torment them.
That's literally the only reason. It's like the meme of like aliens coming to Earth for like slave labor in some sort of movie or something like that. It's like, guys, you're an intergalactic civilization. Why do you need slave labor? Make fucking robots or automate it, you dumbasses. Like
Yeah.
literally, like the Bajoran
Ah, the
occupation.
human's pretty smart. He gets to die a comfy death. The rest of them killed him.
Well, if you can't be
Oh
slaves, I guess
god.
we'll just kill you. It's like, oh wow, this was a really bad recommendation on my end. My bad, guys. My bad. I'll take the L on this one. But
Mm.
at least like with the Bajoran occupation, the justification of it was for resources, not for it was for resources, right? Not for like necessarily slave labor. And labor camps
Mhm.
only kind of existed because it's like, well, we need to put these rambunctious Bajorans in some sort of camp to stop them from getting in the way of our resource gathering. That might be the best justification they have, but I don't think it's very good. Again, different discussion to be had. But
Mhm.
yeah, so anyway, they have a successful mission. We get a brief scene of Lee Nollis getting medically treated by Bashir. Bashir's this is really Bashir's only big scene in this episode. But he's like, "Oh yeah, I read up on your achievements. You're a really great guy." And Lee Nollis is like, I think you'll find that others enjoy talking about those days far more than I do. He's very much off put. He seems like he's almost like a broken man. He doesn't want to talk about this. He doesn't want to deal with this anymore. Uh, and you have still bright-eyed Bashir trying to like romanticize his past, right? Like, oh man, you were a great war hero. It's like, yeah, I killed a lot of people, my guy. I don't want to talk about it. Like that's how it kind of comes across, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
then we get the scene. This is the scene I think we're going to disagree on because we've had a disagreement with it before. Cisco's showing him around the station and shows him the Replimat and says, it can make some passable Bajoran food. Leonos
Mm.
just wants to kind of go rest, but a crowd is gathered, and Cisco says, like, it looks like you're going to need to say something. Everyone's waiting for you to say something. Now, the thing I think we're going to disagree on, again, I don't like the idea that replicators can't perfectly replicate good food. I disagree with that. DS9 keeps trying to push that narrative. I disagree. Fake
Yeah.
news.
Again, listen, it is a case of Cisco being up his own ass and probably arguing like, "Oh, the imperfections are what gives it character."
You can actually
And it's like,
program imperfections. I disagree that you can't. Like, you can
yeah,
program.
okay, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. You now need to also store the data for that imperfection in alongside the regular recipe.
It's no, it's
It's like,
literally just it's just a variable. It's like, okay, let's say you had like I want a bowl of soup, right? Okay, how
mm-hmm,
much soup? How much salt do you put in the soup? Oh, just a gram of salt. Okay, but what
mm-hmm,
you could do is you can also program a variable into that same recipe, uh, anywhere from zero point 0.9 grams to 0.1 or to 1.1 grams, and it will give you a range of salt in that dish that's within that range. You can program all these variables. It's not even like you have to have individual recipes. It's literally just certain elements of the recipe have variables. All right, what's the quality of the chicken? How fresh is the chicken? You could program these as variables in the thing, and then you could say, I want default. Like, I want the perfect recipe. I want it done 100% no imperfections. And then you're like, I want chicken soup. And they're like, do you want perfect no imperfections or variable? Give me variable. I'm feeling a bit frisky today. Maybe I like it with more salt. Who knows? Right? But
mm-hmm.
the point I'm trying to say is, like, you could program imperfections in a recipe. The only thing, and this is something that they kind of carried with for most of TNG, the only thing replicators can't do is create living matter. So gok or tube worms that Klingons and Ferengi eat, you can't make those with replicators.
Well,
That's a good rule,
yeah,
but that's it.
mm-hmm,
So it's like, oh, but like I
uh,
want tube grubs. You can only get like dead tube grubs from a replicator. We can't make a living tube grub. It's like, oh, well, it's not the same thing. It's not the same meal now. I'm okay
mm-hmm.
with that. I am not okay with the whole, this replicators. They just don't taste as good as regular food. It's like, I don't believe you. But DS9 will regularly push this narrative to the point where everyone starts agreeing with that, and I fight on it. They're wrong.
Listen, again, it's a case of they're up their own ass. Even if you can perfectly replicate the imperfection, they're up their own ass.
Yeah,
You
I
need
know.
to accept this.
I'm okay with them if that was acknowledged, but here's the thing. I'm actually okay with Cisco maybe not being for it, but everyone later on agrees, and that's my bigger issue, right? Cisco's a chef. Maybe
Okay,
he has some
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
pride in his own cooking, but like Dax or Bashir, people who aren't cooks, if they're like, like Cisco could literally make some food, and then like Dax being like a snarky bitch could be like, all right, I'm gonna go up to the replicator, scan this dish you just made me, and I can replicate it infinitely now. It's like,
Yeah.
and you just have
So
like Cisco, you just have Cisco give her a dirty look, like fuck you, old man.
you just devalued all this effort and work I put into this. I'm not cooking for you again. Yeah,
Like
that
unironically,
that's the distinction for like it's literally like you can put the imperfections in, but the amount of work it takes to do that is so much like it
no.
feels
Here's like, I am
it's
100% cool with that being a character trait of Cisco, right? The idea of he
mhm,
believes there's an additional value in cooking of doing the actual labor yourself. I'm cool with that, right? I'm also cool with
mhm,
the notion of like, hey, cooking with friends is its own experience, right? Like when he invites friends over and he's cooking the food in front of them, and he, like everyone's kind of participating in the cooking. That's like a fun activity you could do with friends, right? You know, you're all in the kitchen.
mhm,
You add some like, hey, you chop up the chicken. I'm gonna start working on I'm gonna start working on the soup. You know, you could do all that sort of stuff, right? I'm fine with that being
mhm.
a fun activity. And then, like, even if you make something shitty, it's like you're all kind of eating it. It's like, it tastes better from a replicator. Everyone kind of just laughs, but like, yeah, but we had fun doing it. That'd be fine.
Yeah.
When Cisco's like, because they actually make it a canon rule later on that replicators do not replicate food very well, and it's a lot, the taste, that it's like they make a point later on that the taste is diminished from all foods that come from replicators.
Mhm.
Which was actually,
Yeah.
I believe, something in the original series, but they didn't have replicators then. They had something different. Like you had these like little like food cubes, and you put them in a machine, hit a button, and it pops up into a meal. So it's like a prefab meal. You
Mhm.
like freeze dried meal. You put it in like a turkey dinner, and you click the button. And, like that's how the original series kind of functioned, right? There was like this device
Mhm.
that had these like stored things, and those actually did not taste as well. But that's fine because that's like a freeze dried food that you're basically reheating, right?
Mhm.
Whereas here, it's like you're actually manipulating molecules, my guy. Trust me, it's gonna taste the exact fucking same. I'm sorry, that's my rant's over. You get your history rants. I get my really stupid like sci-fi tech rants.
Well, also a cooking rant because you actually pretty regularly cook.
Yes, I do cook.
Uh,
But you know,
cooker.
it's something I find funny. It's something I find funny because like it's almost like
Mhm.
it's trying to kind of address a problem from TNG, which is there's some technology in Star Trek that is that's so OP. It's like you can't beat it. It's like you lose out on a lot of narrative options in terms of like what you can explore when you just say, yeah, in terms of resources, we could just make everything perfectly with no issue. It's like, oh, all right. I mean, I guess someone being a chef doesn't really make sense, does it? It's like, no, it doesn't. I'm looking at you, Voyager.
Yeah.
That's a different issue. We're never if we ever go over Voyager, we're just gonna do like a very like short, like maybe one or two podcasts talking about like the, the biggest hits from Voyager because I don't want to go through every episode of Voyager.
Yeah. But there's so many like little moments of just like, holy shit,
Well,
did they actually say
you
that?
know what my biggest criticism of Voyager is, which is like the just general concept is abandoned very quickly. But that, again, different conversation. We need to return to Lee Nollis talking to the Bajoran people. So Lee Nollis sort of like turns to everybody. Uh, and he has to like kind of give a speech. Let's see. I want to find the exact wording of the speech. Oh, one thing we do get is Kira is meeting with a minister who has come from the planet, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's see. So when Cisco basically says like, yeah, you have to give a speech. I'm trying to find where is it? Where's the speech? Okay, he
Just
says
look
he
up
turns to
Lee
everybody. He
now.
says, yeah, it's good to be free. It's good to know that after all of our years of struggle, Bajor is finally free. And he gets like a sort of small polite like clapping, like it's like a very humble speech, which from this point
Hmm.
we very much view Lee Nollis as someone who's probably very humble.
Yeah.
But Kira meets with one of the ministers, Minister Jaro, and he's basically like he's here to meet Lee Nollis. He's like the prophets were kind to you today, Major.
Hmm.
And he's like, just so you know, your little adventure has made you some enemies in the Chamber of Ministers. And Kira says, I'm not surprised. All I did was risk my life. And Jaro says, what you did, Major, was declare war on Cardassia. Thankfully, they declined the invitation. And he says, look, although officially I have to warn you that the next time you disobey orders will mean the end of your military career, as a private citizen, I want to thank you for what you've done this day.
Hmm.
So, and also that's another confirmation that it is less than a day's travel via runabout from DS9 to Cardassia 4
Yeah.
because they went there and back in less than a day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, God, and a runabout's only capable of warp 5. Oh my God, the fucking I'm remembering a long time ago. You showed me that fucking image. You know the one. It listed all the warp speeds and like what the actual like how long it would take to get from place to place, and it was like yeah, based on this, there's no way the Federation could exist because it would just take so long to
I can
travel
actually, I can
across the
actually,
limit.
I can actually pull that up, but we'll go over that a different episode. Uh, that's actually something made by a certifiably in game. He's a huge Star Trek like YouTuber. Does a lot of content, a lot of really good stuff. Just me
Mm.
shouting out the much more humble channel of certifiably in game. He was like like thousands. We have
Oh
five
yeah,
subscribers.
I
He
have
has.
watched him
He's a
many
yes.
times.
He's a pretty big Star Trek YouTuber. So it's very funny. But he made a
Uh,
he made this chart that showed like all the really sort of fucked up like non-canon like but calculated speeds of warp travel because again Star Trek doesn't do a lot of like how much Star Trek doesn't have a canon map. They don't have canon speeds for warp travel except for warp 1 because warp 1 I believe is the speed of light. But every other warp speed is uh, every other warp speed is like random numbers. There's not a canon description of how fast they are. But yes, so the politician Jaro walks up to Lee Nollis. He says, it's good to see you. I'm the minister. And he's like, would you mind if I adjust the crowd? You can't expect a politician to give an opportunity like this. And Lee's just like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And yeah, he says, like, look, this is a great day. You and your grandkids will remember this. This is the day Lee Nollis returned to Bajor. Lee Nollis seems very uncomfortable about like a lot of this stuff. So he's just like, yeah, he's not happy. Cisco brings Lee Nollis to
yeah.
his quarters. He's like, yeah, early. Like Cisco's like, I hope it's comfortable. He's like, earlier today I was sleeping in a quarry. This is more than fine. And Cisco makes a point that like, the reason you were sort of rescued is Bajor needs strong leadership, and they're hoping that's you. And Lee Nollis is like, I'm not sure if I can do that. And Cisco's like, I'm not sure you have a choice. You gotta like Bajor needs you. And he's like, sounds like I'm gonna need some rest then. Let's
Mm.
see. We then get to this is a small scene, but it's kind of a nice one, or not a nice one for one character. Quark and Rom are doing some trading here, or like they're divvying out the value of like their day's pay. For every 6 slips of latinum that Quark gets, Rom gets one. He's like 6 for you, one for
Yeah.
or 6 for me, one for you, 6 for me, one for you, and then Rom says like, 6 for you, one for me. It's not fair. And Quark's like, you're right. 7 for me, one for you. 7 for me, one for you.
Where are you going? To my
Yeah, Rom walks
well,
away.
your dream of an equal share of profits. It's like you're not the owner, Ron.
That's true.
Darn.
Like clearly Rom is a communist. Um, but
At the very least, a socialist. Which, mm,
well, we know later
yeah,
on that he actually does become one. But uh, anyway,
yeah.
the I mean, you're right. I guess like you can make the point, but I guess the argument would be Rom. We know does a lot of work for the bar, like a lot of work.
I
He's like a
mean, that's
bartender.
true. At the
He's a bartender. He cleans. He fixed the holodecks. Like he does a lot of work. So he clearly is
yeah,
not being
and
paid what he should be.
yeah, like because here's the thing. You and I would agree. He is still super Rom, and eventually they fucking retcon him being stupid. Like they retcon it, but they
Well,
don't retcon it.
yeah.
They can't imply
Well, well,
it was a
we'll
case of
get
being
to it because
stupid.
it's complicated. I don't think they've even
But
established that he's much of a mechanic right now.
yeah, but
But
what I was
yeah.
gonna say, no, I didn't they kind of imply it with the replicator thing in the Babel episode. I could have sworn they brought that. Either way, it doesn't matter. You're right. He does do a lot at the bar and such. I think really Quark should have figured out a way to make it seem like he was giving his brother a raise just by making the numbers seem like they're bigger for him, but they're still the same. because
Well,
that's
so
a like.
that's fair. Like he could have done something like, "I'm going to give you some Quark coin. I'm going to pay you in Quark coin. It'll increase in value." And um, but
Hey,
so
how's
I
your
think
crypto doing, bud? You
hey, I
still in
cashed
it?
out of that a lot. I cashed out of that a long time ago.
Oh, okay. You make profit
I
besides the
made a lot of
Dogecoin?
profit. I made a lot of profit.
Nice, nice.
Anyway, I've revealed too
Yeah,
much about my personal
on
self.
uh,
Uh,
I, I'm I'll compensate. Just so you all know, I made good money on crypto myself. Like, oh boy, you suckers holding that bag at the end. Thank you for your money.
Pike, I think we're too small of a channel to be taunting people who are watching us.
um, See, either I do it now and be honest to myself, or I sell out here at the beginning, and I prefer to be honest. Either they like me
That's
for who
true.
I
That's
am,
true.
or they can fuck
That's
off. I don't
that's true.
like
That's true. I like you for who you are, but I'm
literally.
also a fucked up individual. So
Everyone be aware. I mostly do it because he wants me to do this. Like I'm very much not naturally like an entertainer slash performer. I say while also basically doing that for my job, actual job. Um,
anyway,
but
but yeah.
yeah.
So I think we've gotten on so many tangents on this episode, which is why we're already hitting the 2 hour mark. Um,
Oh God, it's like
but
2
anyway,
a.m. Fuck.
but anyway, yeah, you're the one who wanted to like push this one out like real fast. It's like you keep getting us on these like tangents.
Wait,
Anyway,
you asked me to. Whatever. Moving
anyway,
on.
anyway. But I do agree. I think the reason Quark is so willing to like just screw over Rom is he knows Rom's never going to leave him. Um, but anyway, Rom walks away, and then a bunch of people in these crazy looking masks tackle him and brand his forehead. Trying to get a picture of the
Mm-hmm.
mask. They're like these really creepy masks too. Like they cover their face in like such a creepy way. But uh, Quark is now a victim of a hate crime.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a hate crime.
he was basically branded because he is not a Bajoran. This is the work of the Circle. Bashir is able to fix it. He could like regenerate it thermally, but Quark is like all shaken up from it. Lee Nollis is here as well. He's kind of surprised the Bajorans would do this, and they sort of just make a point that like, look, the Bajoran people they need a lot of help right now. The Circle is more organized than the Bajoran government apparently, so they're able to execute their plans better, even if they're smaller, which I guess that's fair. And Kira's like, look, we need somebody to speak out against these reactionaries, and she wants Lee Nollis to do it. But yeah, Quark is healed. Let's see. Trying to find. And then we get to another scene that's we kind of built up before. Cisco goes home and he sees that his son is sad. When Cisco asks why, it's because apparently Jake was stood up on his date. When asked
Yeah.
why, Jake says like it's because her father says I'm not a Bajoran.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jake experiences racism. It's pretty shit. Cisco
Yep.
sits down with his son and says, like, look, that's not much of a reason. Jake, there are some things happening on Bajor, troubling things. I'm sorry you become a victim of them. You don't deserve it. Nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously this is meant to be like, this is meant to be like emblematic of like actual racism, like the idea of like, yeah, like, Jake is just a victim here. He has no involvement in any of this stuff, but he is, being treated as lesser because he's not Bajoran. It's really just terrible. And Cisco actually is like very clearly mad about this. It's hard to kind of get it across again. But when he gets a call on the phone, he's like actually kind of like really mad. Like he clearly he's just done with it today.
Yeah.
And it turns out someone was trying to stow away on a ship. Lee Nollis was trying to escape.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we kind of learn the
Yeah.
truth. So Lee Nollis tells a story about to Cisco when he's explaining this, and he says, during the occupation, I was a minor resistance member. I was unimportant. I wasn't even very good. I encountered a Cardassian who was naked bathing, and I basically got into a small tussle with him, and I killed him accidentally. Or like he basically like I shot him, but it was like he was trying to run for his phaser, and he fell on top of me, and it was basically just like the worst. Like he killed this guy almost completely by accident, right?
So
And this
yeah.
was
Well,
Gul
you're
Zarai.
kind of downplaying. You, yeah. So So he specifically explains that, oh yeah, we had been having to walk through the mountains for a while with only one phaser because, they've been hunting our resistance cell through there from like, the last winter or whatever. He had gone ahead to, scout things out, and he had rolled down a hill, um, and landed basically at the edge of the pond where Ghost Ryle, who's just in his underwear taking a bath down there, was, and they're both just staring at each other. He's got his phaser rifle. And it's only once Ghost Rail started to reach for his phaser that the that Lee Nala shot him, and his like Gulsarel, dead, drops on top of him, and that's when the other two Bajorans came in and like saw him. And was like, "Huh, it's a great victory. It's not even like an accidental struggle." And then he shot him like he purposely shot him because like he saw it was going to like, oh, he's going to shoot me if I don't. But yeah, yeah, it's very
No, yeah,
much
I mean,
like
100%. It's
yeah.
it's a matter of this, and he makes a point that his men built up this story, and they told every Bajoran like resistance cell they met, and every Bajoran resistance cell told the story again and again about how one of the worst gulls of the Cardassian Empire, who killed hundreds or dozens of villages, was slain by Linalis.
Hmm.
He's like, my reputation even followed me into the labor camp, where my mere presence seemed to inspire my fellow prisoners. Uh, the only thing, the only thing I remember though is I'll never forget the look on his face as he died. He looked so embarrassed.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm a little unsure because they make a point that Lee Nullis actually argued against his story, right? He actually denied it. He's like, no, it wasn't that big a
Hmm.
deal. I didn't do that. Like, I didn't like, wrestle him in bear combat. He makes a point that he actually tried to diffuse the rumors, but no one believed him.
Hmm.
They were just like, no, 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 you're clearly this hero, or at least it spread faster than he could diffuse it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So I think it's a case of he had already maybe amongst the resistance that knew him been established as a humble guy.
oh, sure.
Maybe
I
hadn't
mean,
proved.
again, you could easily be saying like, oh yeah, he's a humble guy. He's not taking credit for what he did. But I'm not gonna lie here. Um, they make a point that he apparently had multiple successful campaigns. Again, that's apparently a rumor,
Mm,
which is fine. Information is not going to easily be transferred because a resistance cell, right? The whole point of a cell is that they're not in communication with the other, so that if you stop one, you can't stop the other, right? They don't have
hmm.
misinformation on each other, so easily lies could propagate between them. I get that.
Yeah.
I find it a little bit unbelievable how big his story apparently became when he himself is denying it. If he leaned into it, I'd believe it more. But I
Hmm.
don't know. The killing of one gull, even a really bad one, and a guy denies that it was a big deal, somehow taking the entirety of the Bajoran people by storm as like the greatest rumor of all time. I'm like, all right, I guess so. Like again, it's one of those things. The episode says it, so I'll believe it, but it feels a little bit like farcical. He's
Hmm.
like, yeah, soon every victory won by the resistance was attributed to my leadership. It's like, really? Like, fine, fine, whatever. I'll buy it, right? Um,
So there's actually an interesting story that I can draw on to kind of highlight what he probably means. There was a Medal of Honor recipient from World War One from my state of Tennessee named Alvin C. York, who he with his basically most of his company had been pinned down, and so he basically volunteered to go around the flank to basically shoot at the Germans and try and scare them. And he was one of those guys who had like grown up shooting, and he's really fucking good at it. And he was very fast about it. And so he taking up a couple rifles and some extra ammunition for all of them. And he was so just terrifyingly effective in what he did that he got, I think, like uh like a couple squads, maybe a platoon, may even upwards to a company to surrender. But then the news spread down the line to where people are saying that he had captured like generals and such on his own, all by himself, and it's like, no, that's not what I did. That's not what it is. Like, what Lee Knowles is describing is something that can actually happen, of just like, yeah, people will like make up these legends to basically be like, yeah, we're winning. Look at what this guy did. Our Paragon, right? Our hero. And it's like, yeah, I, I, I get what he's talking about, and it's like, yeah, I could believe that this is something people talk about, and it just gets blown out of proportion.
I
Like,
mean, again,
yeah,
I'll believe it. I think my issue is more in the sense of like, I don't know. I think like unless he had multiple accidental victories or something like that. I mean, maybe he was involved in some other victories, and because he was like just present on the battlefield, people gave him credit, right? It's like, yeah, I was transferred to this other cell, and like that cell succeeded because we got lucky, but everyone said it was because of my leadership, right? It's like literally, he's a favored by fortune almost, right? Like, yeah, I
mm-hmm,
happened to be present at a lot of situations where we had victories, and people attributed it to me, even though I didn't do much because they already believed I was this great hero. But the fact that he kind of implies it's only this one event, either way, the point is he is very worried because he's like, look, I can't be a leader. I'm not the person they think I am. And Cisco says, and this is where we get. I wrote down in my notes. This is where we get dubious Cisco for another point in time. He's like, look, perhaps not, but Bajor doesn't need a man. They need a symbol, and that's what you are. No one's asking you to lead troops into battle or to kill 100 Cardassians with your bare hands. I saw you in front of a crowd of the promenade. They look at you and they see strength, honor, and decency. They look at you and they see the best in themselves. He says, Lee says it's based on a lie. He's like, no, it's based on a legend, and legends are as powerful as any truth. Bajor still needs a legend. It needs you. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like Cisco's maybe a little bit uninformed on maybe some of the details here, but I get what he's saying. This is definitely pretty dubious though. Like,
mm-hmm.
unironically, if news of this got out, it would destroy Bajor.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah,
if they really believe that Lee Nallis is the kind of guy who can unite Bajor right now with all this chaos, right? Then
mm,
if he would be the unified leader, if he fell because of the truth coming out, it would destroy Bajor. Like that's like okay, you built everything on this one faulty pillar. Either way, um, so yeah, we kind of get to the last scene. It's somewhat of an inspirational scene. I don't disagree with Cisco. If the situation on Bajor was really as bad as it's kind of implied, this might be a necessary risk. Again, I'm willing to believe it, but the episode needs to sell to me on a little bit more for me to be 100% happy. Some time passes, and the minister arrives with another. He and Leo also arrive. They make a point that they have given him the title of Navarch, which is a title that they invented because no other title seemed appropriate for him.
mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, they
Yeah.
felt any existing
Oh,
title was
no.
accurate, so they
It's
created a new
Navarch.
one for me.
It's such a weird. It's Navarch. It's such a weird word. Like, what
I think
is
they
this?
pronounce it. I think they pronounce it Navarch, but
No,
Navarch. Either way, um,
yeah.
like there's never been one before. They felt any existing title was inadequate. I'm like, god damn, like seriously, these people legitimately worship this guy. He is like the second coming for them, and they already have Cisco. Like either way,
Yeah, but Cisco's a human.
true. Um,
Yeah.
let's see. And this is where we get the sort of cliffhanger for this episode that'll lead into the next one. They make a point that Lee Nallis is going to be stationed here on DS9. And they're like, but wait a minute, we already have a liaison. It's like, yeah, Kira's being transferred.
Yeah. Oh wait, no,
Uh,
this is not yet. Oh.
uh, yeah, so that's the end of part one for episode one of season two of DS9, leading directly into the next episode, which is the Circle. Um, yeah, like so clearly, I think this episode does a pretty good job at reestablishing most of the characters. Bashir is probably the person who gets the least amount of reestablishment, but he's also not as important of a character yet.
Hmm.
I would have liked more for Odo, but
Yeah.
that's not what his plot was about. We got a good amount of Cisco. We got a good amount of Kira, good amount of O'Brien, a decent amount of Dax. You know, she's not super relevant to the episode, but she does play a decent role. Uh, we got some good stuff with Quark. So, I mean, overall, I don't think it's a bad episode in any way. There's definitely some major flubs here. I don't know if I'm willing to give this. I definitely know I'm not willing to give this an A. Do you think this is B tier?
Um, yeah, as we were going through it, you pointed out some problems and such, and like I wouldn't say I convinced myself enough to overcome. Like I would say like B is good for this.
Well,
B is
I'm
good.
actually I'm actually asking because I'm honestly leaning towards maybe C tier. I don't think it's bad. I think it's very middling
Oh,
episode.
whoa, B.
B.
It is a
Well,
yeah, it's a B.
look, I again, I just kind of want to point out, I think there's some pretty big problems with this episode. Lee Nalls' story, I think, is a little bit okay. I guess I'll believe it. I suppose it's just I don't know if I would really believe that is going to be as like as propagated as you think it is. I think the entire like escape from the prison camp or the labor camp is a bit like okay, you could have put more work into this, guys, because this is a very bad plan. Um, Again, there's some technology
Well,
stuff that we're a little bit unsure of how like kind of functions, but again, the reason I'm giving it a C is there anything in this episode you think is like really good
um,
outside of maybe some like acting stuff because there's some good acting, I won't deny that, but is there any like writing
yeah.
element you think is like really good?
So I'm I do want to push back on this is a bad plan because if we're saying like oh this is a bad plan it's like well yeah like but the thing is for them to get the information to make a better plan like in universe for it to make sense they would uh like need to be like okay we need to somehow get an agent on there to investigate it. It's like it would just take fucking forever and it's like so their bad plan is made because basically they have to go there and in the heat of the moment figure something out and they're up in the runabout like talking about like they acknowledge it like oh this is very risky because initially they were like oh we thought it was just going to be Lee Nellis but it's multiple Bajorans down there and we cannot determine which one is Lee and
No, I
if
know.
we
Like they
keep
make that point that they can't just beam him up, which was their initial plan. My again,
right
my issue is more in the sense of like, okay, you acknowledge this is potentially starting a war with Cardassia, right? Yes. You acknowledge this is potentially a suicide mission for two of your one of your officers and one of your high level enlisted, right? Yes. Okay. The mission goes off. The two people, both of whom are experts in tactical combat, like both of them have fought in wars, right? Both of them are vets of military combat. They sneak on there with like a prostitution gamble that works. Uh, and then
mm-hmm.
once like Kira is in the force field, she just knocks out the Cardassian, steals his gun, and they start just like shooting at the rest of the Cardassians. They have no idea how many Cardassians are stationed there. For one, if they do, they don't make a point of like they don't make a point of that in the episode. And they're in a quarry where all the Cardassians have an advantage where they're at like vantage points. Like all the Cardassians are sitting on like large rocks, like watching down on the Bajorans. They just run in there, shoot a bunch of the Cardassians, and then get a bunch of Bajorans out. No one dies. At least on screen, no one dies. And I'm sitting there like, really? That's your plan? That's the equivalent of me running up to a guy and being like, I'm gonna slap you, and then just run away, and then he pulls out a gun and shoots me. It's like, oh, well, yeah. Like I just ran straight away. Like it's not like I had like cover. I just again, I think like it's it works, but I think they needed a lot more for me to feel like it worked. Like if they had just said like, yeah, like there's a skeleton crew of Cardassians here. There's only like 5 or 6 actual guards, and like
Mm-hmm.
Kira and O'Brien basically like took out 2 of the guards via stealth, and then like the other like 3 or 4 they managed to like outfire. I believe that a little bit more, but as it is, I think it's very much like you took a lot of fucking risks here, and there's a lot of like contrivance that allow you to succeed in that. I don't think it's a very good. I just don't think it's a very good representation of like what they could have done as a plan, and the risks are extraordinarily high. Like again, it's not just their lives; it's war with Cardassia.
Mm-hmm.
Because like unironically, if they died, like Kira knocks out that one Cardassian, and then she and O'Brien get shot. Uh, Cardassia would be like, yeah, so uh, we found 2 of your one of your Federation officers and one of your Bajoran officers snuck into our territory, killed a Cardassian, and then we managed to stop them. Yeah, we're declaring war. It's like, oh yeah, that would have been the alternative. Like there's an element of I get that Lee Nallis is important. They say he's important enough, I'll believe it. But the plan that they do for this is not good enough. Again, I think it's fine. There's still a lot of decent parts of this episode. I just don't know if there's anything that's really good. that. Remember how we talked about with Duet, how the ending is kind of shit, but the whole episode is
Uh,
so phenomenal.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like there's an element of I am willing to excuse some bad parts of Star Trek if the same episode has a lot of good stuff that raises my opinion of it, right? If there was a lot of really good dialogue or a lot of really good scenes and there was just one or two kind of bad scenes that are like, okay, I'll buy it, right? I'll agree that like your runabout is this good, your technology is this way, this is the political situation as you stated. But there's a lot of them just sort of expositing, saying this is what we're capable of. Just trust me, bro. And I'm like, fine, I'll believe you. But there's a lot of that I have to do this episode for this episode to work. And there's a few parts that it's really bad for. And then overall, the episode is kind of mostly just okay. Like, so I'm giving it a C. I'm okay with you giving it a B. But personally, I'm leaving it at a C for now. Maybe as we review the next two episodes, some things will be contextualized in a way that makes me like this episode better. Right now, I think I'll say this. It's at least kind of like a high C tier. I'm putting it like a high C tier. You know, like but generally, I think like it's not a skippable episode. I don't think this is skippable. I think this is worth watching. I just think it's very middling because there's good and there's bad, and overall, I can't objectively say it's good. So either way, anything else we need to say about the episode?
Nothing else really. Like we
All
covered
right,
everything I could think of.
all right. Well,
Uh,
thank you everyone for joining us for season two. I hope everyone likes season one. I'm going to make a playlist for it so it's easier for people to watch it all in the future. And hope you like the new layout. I worked very hard on it. If you point out any flaws on it, I swear to God, I will cry. And
you will
yeah, so
cry. I will get a message at 3 a.m. about it,
well, 3
and
a.m.
then
your
I'll
time.
ignore it because it looks.
3 a.m. your
Yeah.
time. But yeah, so yeah, that was season one of or season two, episode one of DS9. I hope you guys join us again for the next few episodes. This is a longer season, 26 episodes. So get ready, Pike. Let's do this.